subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bad sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father, I have black sons. Hey man, I do what I do.
Welcome to the broadcast. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. I hope everybody's having a great day. Big shout out to David Boyd, new member. That makes you my 200th member. Big shout out to you, David Boyd. You are number 200. Somebody type 200 in the chat room in celebration of David Boyd. Thank you so much for your membership. Please enjoy all the videos that I have hidden away. Oftentimes the behind the scenes material that I have here is what you will see there. So you guys make sure you go check out that. But anyway, welcome everybody. My name is Dennis Spurling. I hope you all are having a pleasant day. Unfortunately, this broadcast is one of those ones that's going to expose a lot of the seedy underbelly of our country. Now, again, I am a foundational Black American. I can trace my roots back for centuries. And I recognize that this is our country. And unfortunately for us, like many of you all, you know that we have a lot of issues when it comes to racism and bigotry, et cetera, et cetera. But that's never stopped us before. And what I would like to do in this particular broadcast is just kind of maybe enlighten you, help you all see some things from a different perspective. And as I always say, if you learn something, I should earn something. Somebody type learn and earn in the chat room, or you can pick one just to remind you guys. And I think you all will learn something. Now, tonight's topic is, and just so you guys understand, what I try to do is take whatever is relevant, whatever's going on in pop culture, and make it relevant to you and try to put it on some sort of historical hanger, if you will, so people can properly categorize it. And that's typically what I do. And so tonight we're going to talk about the situation. As you guys see, the broadcast is entitled Chud the Builder, the trashy problem open air racists bring to America. Okay. Chud the Builder, or what's his name? Is his name Butt Plug the Builder? So I don't know. Is it Chud the Builder, or is it Butt? Somebody type Butt Plug in the chat. What's this guy's name? Is it Chud or Butt Plug? I can't seem to figure out, what his proper name is. But I don't know why I thought it was Butt Plug the Builder. I don't know what happened. Or Chud the Butt Plug. Is that it? Something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll have to, there was some information on the internet related to this guy. I don't know, maybe is that some sort of building tool that he uses in his former life. I think they actually have this gentleman in some very interesting articles of clothing. But unfortunately, Chud, the Builder, we'll call him that until we figure it out. He was involved in a shooting outside of a Tennessee courthouse, and has now landed him in, or his name is Dalton Etherly, and also known as Chud the Builder online. He's landed him in jail. He has a $1.5 million bond. And after investigators say he shot another man, a black man, outside the Montgomery County Courthouse in Clarksville, Tennessee. Okay. And then he messed around and shot himself during the same confrontation. And according to the arrest affidavit reported by the Associated Press, the shooting happened on Wednesday, May 13th, 2026 at about 1:19 p.m. And apparently Mr. the Builder, or Mr. Dalton, Etherly was leaving the courthouse related to a previous incident. And he actually it was out on bail from another county, I believe. But either way, apparently a verbal altercation outside the courthouse happened. And the affidavit says that Dalton turned his body, reached toward a firearm in his right jacket pocket, and assumed a bladed stance, which means the person you're here, the person that you're confronting is in front of you, and he's reaching for his weapon. Somebody type bladed stance in the chat room. Somebody type bladed stance. And then if we have any shooters here, any people, any operators, you understand exactly what I'm referring to. But anyway, Etherly then fired his weapon. He struck the other man multiple times, including in the belly. And witnesses account that the audio also indicated that Etherly shot himself in the arm. Okay, so as he was pulling out he apparently shot himself in the shoulder. That's, you know, you need to take whoever gave him his firearms certification needs to have it revoked. But the brother who he wounded was taken by helicopter to Nashville Hospital for emergency surgery. And now, based on the early reports and based on what Etherly himself said, while lying on the stretcher after the shooting, this doesn't look like a situation where Chud the Builder was simply minding his business and got randomly attacked. In his own live stream explanation, which I'll let you all see later, Etherly claimed that he approached the man. Somebody type approached in the chat room. So he approached the man. That's a very important fact. Okay, he approached this black man, and he claims that the man was pointing and laughing at him, and he said that the man warned him not to start saying "chimp out" language toward him, and that if he did so, he'd swing on him. Okay. In other words, even by Etherly's own version, he appears to have initiated the interaction instead of just walking on by and minding his business. And that matters because this wasn't some unknown man with no public history. Dalton Etherly had already built an online brand as Chud the Builder by live streaming himself, confronting black people in public using racial slurs and trying to turn those reactions into internet content. And so you even have the AP, which is a news reporting agency, reports that Etherly is known for posting videos where he tries to provoke black people with racial slurs and racist dog whistles. And, you know, here's the thing. Basically, he's a rage bait live streamer who's filmed himself making these racist derogatory comments towards black people while claiming he was standing for his First Amendment. Somebody type First Amendment in the chat room, because we're going to deal with this on that level too. But see, the timeline makes the situation look even worse. You have a situation where, you know, in late April 2026, Etherly was reportedly banned indefinitely from Kick, which is another video streaming service, after the backlash over videos showing him using racial slurs and arguing with people during his streams. And so here's another thing, and his earlier 3-day ban grew into an indefinite ban after older videos spread online and viewers accused him of public harassment. And then on May 9th, 2026, just 4 days before the courthouse shooting, Etherly was arrested at Bob's Steakhouse, or Bob's Steak and Chop House in Nashville, after staff told him not to live stream or disrupt the restaurant. And according to a local television station, police said he kept live streaming. He became disruptive. He yelled, screamed, made racial comments, and then refused to pay his $371.55. And he was charged with theft and disorderly conduct, and he was later released on a $5,000 bond. So this cat was already on bond. And so then came May 13, 2026, and this time the alleged antics didn't end with the platform ban, okay, or restaurant arrest, or another viral clip. But this time a black man, a veteran, was shot, okay, and Etherly allegedly shot himself, okay, and there were a lot of innocent bystanders nearby, and the prosecutors charged him with attempted murder. aggravated assault, employing a firearm doing a dangerous felony, and reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon. And so the AP also reported that the judge noted that Etherly had already been released. Okay, somebody type already been released on bond. Okay. And in two other cases, including a case in Montgomery County, a harassment charge from November, and in recent Davidson County restaurant case. Okay, so this is why this story is bigger than one shooting. This is the problem with being an open racist bigot for clicks. Eventually, that performance leaves the live stream, enters the real world, and people get hurt. Now, Chud the Builder was walking around calling black people chimps. Okay, you know, telling them to stop chimping out, using the N-word with the hard ER, apparently believing that the First Amendment gave him complete protection to say whatever he wanted to say, whoever he wanted to say it to. And yes, under the United States Constitution, people generally do have broad protections to say offensive, hateful, or controversial things. Okay. But what Chud the Builder either didn't understand or pretended not to understand is that the First Amendment, I want y'all to pay attention. Okay. Are you guys hear me clearly? All right. Somebody type First Amendment. I want y'all to hear me clearly. Let's learn something. Okay. First Amendment only protects you from government punishment. Okay. It doesn't protect you from getting stolen. Okay. It doesn't protect you from getting chin checked. Somebody type chin check in the chat room. There's no magical First Amendment shield. This don't gonna stop somebody from side kicking you in your pelvis, okay, for saying something crazy. Okay, see what I'm saying is, family, it doesn't protect you from the reactions of private citizens, and it doesn't magically shield you from the consequences of provoking people in public. And the First Amendment to the Constitution, I want to read it to you, okay? This is what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting or establishing respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Okay? And the key words are Congress shall make no law, which means the government. Okay? Because at some point we figured out, well, it's not just about the federal government, it's about state, local governments, and also cops. Okay? That amendment was written to limit the power of the government. And see, this is the thing. The founding fathers had just come from England, okay, where people were punished, persecuted, and controlled over religion and political beliefs. And you couldn't say what you wanted to say. The king would off with your head. And that's why religion appears first in the First Amendment. The original purpose was to stop the government from controlling how people worship and what they believed and what the ideas they expressed publicly. And over hundreds of years, the Supreme Court explained the meaning of the amendment through constitutional interpretation, and rule that it protects many forms of speech and expression, including that which we considered offensive speech. Okay. But here's another thing people need to understand. A lot of America's biggest free speech cases didn't come from polite political debates or peaceful academic discussions. Many of these landmark cases came from racist, extremist segregationists like the KKK members and people engaging in inflammatory racial conduct. And that's one of the uncomfortable realities of American constitutional law. Some of the broadest protections for speech were established in cases involving deeply offensive racist behavior. So Chud the Builder isn't the first racist bigot to hide behind the First Amendment after publicly provoking folk with this hateful rhetoric. And even free speech isn't unlimited. The Supreme Court itself has repeatedly said that there are categories of speech that receive limited or no constitutional protection. In other words, the Constitution can't even protect you from the government if the government bans you from saying it, okay? One of the most famous examples is a case called Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire. It's a 1942 case. And that case involved a Jehovah's Witness named Walter Chaplinsky, okay? Who he was preaching on the public street and causing tension. He's out there raising hell, okay? And to calm the situation down, Chapel. Well, see, here's what happened. So he was causing tension in the crowd around him, and so a city marshal stepped in to calm the situation down, and Chapolinsky got angry and called the marshal a goddamn racketeer and a damned fascist. And you got to understand something. This is at the height of Yahtzee Germany. This is when Yahtzee Germany was popping off. Okay, it was a lot of, so calling somebody a fascist really meant something back then. Okay, and so so anyway, he was arrested under state law, banning offensive speech, and directed at that he was directed at other people in the public. And when the case reached the Supreme Court, the court ruled that certain fighting words, somebody typed fighting words in the chat room, certain fighting words likely to provoke an immediate violent reaction, like calling somebody a chimp or N-word, right? They don't receive the same level of constitutional protection as normal speech. In other words, the court recognized that some speech is so inflammatory and confrontational that it can be immediately a trigger. It can immediately trigger violence and breach the peace. And so then you have a case called the Brandenburg v. Ohio case. This is 1969. It's when your mama was born. Okay. And this is where, or some of y'all was around. Don't give up your age, but this is where race becomes directly connected to a modern free speech law. In that case, involved Clarence Brandenburg. He was a KKK leader in Ohio. I know y'all didn't know they went that high. Yeah, Ohio, right? He was invited on the television. He invited a television crew to film him at a Klan rally, okay? And during the rally, you had armed Klansmen. They stood around burning crosses, making racist threats against Black people and Jewish people. And Brandenburg talked about possible, what he called revengeance against the government and promoted racist violence. And he was convicted under Ohio law, banning criminal syndicates and advocating violence. But the Supreme Court overturned his conviction and ruled that the government generally can't punish speech unless it's directed towards inciting imminent lawless action, and it is likely to immediately produce violence. So that's an important word, imminent. Okay, imminent means it's about to happen right now, not prospective, not it's going to happen in the future. It's going to happen right now. Okay, saying what people should do, revengeance and all that, that's not imminent. Okay, so again, so think about that for a second. One of the most, and this is important, one of the most important free speech protections in American history came out of a case involving armed KKK rally with racist threats in Crossburg. Okay, and when you really start looking at jurisprudence here in the United States, whether we're talking about property law, criminal law, constitutional law, all the amendments, a lot of it has to do with Black people. We are at the center. We literally drive this country. We determine rent prices. We determine where people want to live. I want you Black folks to think about just how these people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars extra just to not live around us. They have literally created a criminal justice system to regulate Black people and our behavior. The health industry, they would have health insurance if it wasn't for Black people. You see what I'm saying? I just want you to know just how this country really, a lot of the law, when you start looking at the property law, especially early, it's all based on some involvement with Black people, whether it's the purchase and sell about. It's very interesting. And so now, as I look at this as a jurist, I recognize that trend. Some of your most important free speech dictum and rulings come from issues surrounding Black people and racism. It's horrible. But let's move back. Let's go back to well, let me see. Let me finish that up. So and I want to finish that. The Supreme Court it doesn't mean the Supreme Court is approving racism just because they overturned that case out of Ohio involving Brandenburg. But it means that the court was trying to define where the constitutional line exists between hateful speech and actual criminal incitement. Okay. Now, there's another case called Virginia v. Black in 2003. Somebody type Virginia v. Black, Virginia v. Black, 2003, very recent. And this is another case deeply rooted in America's racial history. And that case involved cross burnings. I mean, yeah, they still burning crosses in 2003, right? Which for decades were used by white supremacists and KKK leaders to terrorize black families. And in one of the incidents involved in the case, the cross was burned near the home of a black family in Virginia. Okay. Virginia, this is not Alabama, over there in Virginia. Okay. And Virginia passed a law banning cross burning carried out with the intent to intimidate. And the Supreme Court ruled that while some forms of symbolic expression may be protected, true threats and intimidation aren't protected by First Amendment. And the court recognized the historical reality that cross burning wasn't just speech. It was often a deliberate act of racial terror meant to make people fear violence or death. See, the whole cross burning thing popped up after the Civil War ended. You had a bunch of black folks doing well for themselves. You had the Union troops. So you had a bunch of angry Southerners riding around on horses with sheets on their head and trying to pretend like they were ghosts. And then they pop up at your house in the middle of the night with a cross and burn it. And it also was a way in which to intimidate black competitors, black people who own businesses, black people who had farms. It's a way in which they ran them off their farms. And then white folk would then just occupy their houses. There's a place in Georgia, there's a county in Georgia that was predominantly black. And the white folk came in and ran all the black people off the damn property. And they still have that property today. Okay. So again, the Supreme Court sustained that that law against cross burning was deemed it was constitutional. Now, there's another case that popped up in 2023. It's called Counterman v. Colorado, and the Supreme Court dealt with threatening online speech. Okay, and that case involved a man named Billy Counterman who repeatedly sent disturbing Facebook messages to a lady musician over a long period of time, and the messages became increasingly like weird and obsessive and frightening, and it made the woman fear for her life. And so Counterman argued that his messages were protected by free speech. Okay, so basically he was sliding in her inbox, he was down in the DMs, and she didn't want him in the DMs. Okay, so he's saying crazy stuff in the DMs, and she started fearing for her life. And so but the Supreme Court ruled that the true threats aren't protected speech, and Counterman argued that the messages were protected speech. I can say whatever I want in her DMs, but the Supreme Court said, no, you can't. That's a threat. Those aren't protected speech, and the government can punish you for doing that. So you're going back to jail. Okay, and so what that saying is when the person delivering the speech, the speaker, consciously disregards the risk that the statements would be viewed as threatening. Okay, that's important because states have built criminal laws around these principles for decades. In many state criminal codes, including laws dealing with disorderly conduct and harassment and assault and terroristic threats and provocation and self-defense, are influenced by Supreme Court rulings recognizing that not every form of speech is protected equally under every circumstance. And that's the case in Tennessee, okay, where Dalton Etherly is being held. Now, when courts analyze self-defense claims, what they're going to do is examine whether somebody provoked somebody in the confrontation. I mean, did you pick this fight? Who started this? If you walked up on somebody who was minding their business and you then end up shooting that person, it's going to be real hard for you to prove self-defense, especially when you have a reputation for provoking people, okay? But again, whether you provoke the confrontation, that means words can absolutely matter when determining who escalated the conflict and whether deadly force was legally justified. But nowhere does the Constitution say other citizens have to quietly tolerate your BS. Okay, we have to deal with you no matter what you say. See, and that's part of the problem that Chud the Builder either failed to understand or intentionally ignored. The First Amendment does not give you immunity from human beings reacting to you. Okay, It doesn't stop another citizen from becoming angry or offended or emotional or even violent after you provoke them. And once another person reacts physically, the issue is no longer simply free speech. Okay, now we're dealing with criminal law and assault and provocation and self-defense and fighting words and whether somebody escalated the confrontation. And that's exactly why this case isn't some, some free speech crusade. Okay. Chud the Builder wasn't standing on the steps of Congress protesting the government. He was fighting, he wasn't fighting censorship laws. Okay. All right. Okay. Even in his own statement, when he was on that stretcher, he said, I approached this black man and that brother was with his woman or some female black woman who, and he allegedly started saying inflammatory things to him. Okay. So he initiated the interaction and escalated into violence. And the man reportedly told Chud he suffered from PTSD, and the reports indicated he was a former military serviceman. And at some point, the confrontation escalated. It became physical, and the man hit Chud, and Chud responded by pulling out a firearm and shooting him in the stomach while also accidentally shooting himself. Now, there's some issues in there because now the reports are that Chud entered into the bladed stage before the altercation, and he was reaching for his weapon, and the man, and we're assuming that at that point, the man wanted to protect himself and swung on Chud the Builder. So think about it. You chilling with your woman and some crazy white dude who's been saying racist stuff rolls up on you and your woman in front of the courthouse. He says something crazy to you, jumps in the bladed stand, reaches for his weapon. It's you and your woman right there. And so you swing on him, and he still pulls his gun out. He finishes the motion, pulls the guns out, and shoots you multiple times and hits himself. That's reckless to me. Okay, that sounds like you got 80 years. You might have a date, but you won't see it. That's what it's like. Adios to the free world. That's what that sounds like to me. But anyway, the question is going to be: did he provoke the confrontation? And we don't have all the facts. Okay, we want to wait for all the facts to come in, etc. But based on the preliminary statement, it sounds like he did provoke the conversation, and where his words considered fighting words. If you out here calling people, and we don't know what he said. I don't know if this was live streamed. It's going to depend on what the witnesses say. But did he reasonably fear seriously bodily injury? Now, if you reaching for a weapon and somebody hits you in the face, right, that's them defending themselves. Okay. And was deadly force justified? You hit him, he popped him multiple times. Did he escalate the situation? See, those are criminal law questions, and they don't have anything to do with the First Amendment at this point. And see, and that's the confusion a lot of people have. They think free speech means freedom from consequences. That's what you all think. You think I can say what the hell I want to say, and because I have free speech, there's nothing you can do about it. And it doesn't work like that. Not in the real world. Somebody type real world in the chat room. Okay. Are y'all hearing me? I want to make sure you all are hearing me. It's a lot. I know I'm going fast, but it's a very complicated topic, and I want to make sure I get it in there. If you hear me clearly, type we hear you in the chat room. Type we hear you. Okay. Free speech don't mean a free you can get a free ass whooping along with that free speech. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. The government generally can't punish you simply for expressing yourself. But if you walk up on another private citizen and you antagonize that person and you insult them and you provoke them and you create a hostile confrontation, you're entering into dangerous territory where real world consequences can follow. Okay? You can't you can say fighting words if you want to. Okay? But do so at your own peril. Now, let's move on to something else. Judd was strapped. He stayed strapped. Okay. And so so we have to move into the Second Amendment. Okay. We talked about the First Amendment. Now let's talk about the Second Amendment, because see, this case doesn't just involve speech. It involves a gun. It involves self-defense law and the dangerous combination of provoking Black people by hurling the N-word at them while carrying a gun. And we can look at the videos, we can look at the live streams, and we can look at Chud the Builder's own online persona. It is clear that Dalton Etherly expected Black people to, quote unquote, chimp out, his words, not mine, and react violently to being called N-words, okay, and chimps. And in other words, he intentionally used racial slurs and inflammatory language because he believed deep down in his little bigoted heart that eventually some black person would snap, get emotional, throw a punch, or physically react and give him the opportunity to shoot them, which he did, which is why he kept the pistol on him. And we can look at the videos circulating online. Etherly was always armed while confronting black people in public. And a lot of reports indicate that he carried what appeared to be a semi-automatic handgun, and in several encounters, he allegedly referenced the gun and it was displayed or used. He used his presence to intimidate people after provoking them. So what you effectively have here is somebody using what he believes is his First Amendment right to racially insult and provoke black people while simultaneously relying on his Second Amendment right to carry a firearm in case those same black people who he just insulted reacted physically. And that's a very dangerous combination. Look, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says this. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Nowhere in there does it say every man can carry a strap. It does not say that, does it? I didn't read that. Now, when you actually read the language, as I just did, and you read it carefully, the amendment starts with the phrase, a well-regulated militia. Historically, the amendment was heavily connected to the idea that states needed armed militias for the defense and protection. And you got to put yourself, let's picture this. At the time the Constitution was written, the founding fathers had just fought a Revolutionary War against the British. Okay, and we damn near lost. Okay, so and we didn't want another king. Somebody typed no kings in the chat. We didn't want another king. No more kings. And so the founding fathers, the authors of the Constitution, they did not like centralized government. They didn't want, you can call it what you wanted, but it sounds too much like a king, okay? And they also didn't want any standing armies, okay? Which means you got an army, those men are loyal to somebody, they can invade you at any time. Citizens often kept weapons, okay? You got to remember, where are we in the United States? It's a very rural, people hunt. People out there by themselves. There's a lot of Native American conflict going on between the settlers. And so they had to stay strapped or get clapped. You understand? they had to keep that tool with them. Somebody typed that 5 in the chat room. They had to keep that 5 with them. Isn't that what y'all say, that 5? That F5, they had to keep that 5 with them. So they kept weapons, not only for self-defense, but also for militia service. And of course, hunting and just general community defense. You never know when you have to pop somebody. Now, over time, the Supreme Court began to interpret the Second Amendment as protecting an individual citizen's right to possess arms, not just the collective right of states to maintain militias. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You have a well-regulated militia, so that means those individuals who are part of that militia probably need to have their own guns. Okay, so makes sense that if you want a well-regulated militia, they got to have weaponry. Okay, and so it makes sense so that only flows. It makes sense, you see, that because we don't want to supply all these guns. Guns are hard to get back then. Okay, now it's important to understand something about the Supreme Court cases. The Supreme Court doesn't just randomly take cases because somebody lost in court. Just because your big head self got ordered to pay more child support than you're supposed to, and you trying to tell your judge, I want to take it off, tell your lawyer, I'm going to take it all away. We want to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. No, you're not. Okay. First of all, the Supreme Court, federal court is not really trying to deal with family law cases. Number two, even if it was, it doesn't take every case. I mean, we're talking about the U.S. Supreme Court, even state Supreme Courts, but back to the U.S. Supreme Court, they receive thousands of requests every year, and they only agree to hear a very small number of them. So when the Supreme Court decides to take a case, it's usually because the justices believe there's a major constitutional issue that needs to be clarified and corrected or expanded or limited or completely redefined for the entire country. And in many situations, lower courts around the country may be disagreeing with each other or the Supreme Court may believe an important constitutional right is being misunderstood. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a big shout out to Mr. CJ Marsh 504 for being the first person to contribute to the super chat after me sitting here talking for 35 minutes and 32 seconds. Thank you for being the first person to learn something, my brother. Good to see you in here. Okay. They but that's okay. That's okay. You don't owe me nothing. You don't learn nothing. I don't earn nothing. But let me get back to the teaching because I want to keep this thought. Now, again, so we're talking about the Second Amendment, and there was a case I want to talk about, District of Columbia. Somebody type DC. District of Columbia versus Heller was a 2008 case. Okay. Now, before Heller, there was this huge legal debate in the United States over the Second Amendment and what it actually meant. You had courts and legal scholars, they believed that the amendment only protected the right of states to maintain militias, similar to like the National Guard. And others believed it protected the individual citizen's right to protect and to own firearms for self-defense. And the issue finally came to a head in Washington, D.C., which had some of the strictest gun laws in the country, okay? Now, think about that. D.C. had effectively banned handguns and required lawful firearms inside the home to be unloaded and disassembled or locked up. Even if somebody needed to defend themselves during an emergency, can you imagine that somebody breaking in your front door and you got, oh Lord, I got to get, where's my strap? You got to go and find the gun. It's locked away in the safe somewhere. You nervous, people kicking in, you open the goddamn door, right? And so you got to go reassemble the gun like a damn Lego project, put the clip in. By the time you get, they hit you upside the head. By that time, you had to disassemble. Think about that. Think about that. And so many Americans, that's ridiculous because people argue that a firearm locked away, unloaded, isn't very useful. What you gonna pick it up and throw it at them? Huh? Somebody breaking in your house in the middle of the night, you fumbling around trying to put a gun together. Shit. I mean, the whole purpose of self-defense is to be able to immediately respond to danger, right? Now, at the same time, you got to picture this, right? We in D.C., and this is the District of Columbia, and they had a legitimate public safety concern. Washington, D.C., as most of you all know, is the nation's capital. It's the home of federal buildings and foreign embassies and government officials, lots of tourists, and major political institutions. And lawmakers, they were concerned. They were concerned about violent crime and political instability and assassination attempts and possibly the possibility of heavily armed folk walking around the seat of the federal government. And historically, America has always had a fear of political violence reaching the Capitol, especially when you remember events like, I don't know, the War of 1812, where the British force invaded Washington. They burned down a bunch of government buildings and they literally temporarily occupied Washington, D.C. And the historical memory contributed to the belief that the government had the strongest interest in heavily regulating firearms in sensitive areas. Think about it. Lincoln assassinated, Ronald Reagan attempted assassination. You see what I'm saying? And so again, we want to keep these guns down around here. And so that same basic reasoning applied to many of the large cities, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston. You know how many crazy people are there? In these densely populated areas, they like, nah, everybody can't have a gun. Nah, it's too many crazy people in New York. Shout out to New York. Y'all crazy, especially Philadelphia. Craziest people in the world, Philadelphia. Have you ever been to a Philadelphia sporting event? Crazy people. Imagine if all of them, not only are they drunk, but they also strapped. It's a horrible fight, right? And Boston is no better. So the more crowded and populated the city becomes, the greater the concern about violent crime and accidental shootings and gang activity and mental illness, crazy people, road rage, right? Unstable people carrying firearms in public. That's why a lot of major cities, especially in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Midwest, the further north y'all go, the crazier you get. They have these strict regulations, right? Right? More so than rural communities down south, right? And lawmakers in those cities, they say that, hey, look, high population, that type of density, it creates very unique public safety risks that justify stronger firearm regulation. And that's really the ongoing constitutional balancing act in America when it comes to guns. On one side, you got folks saying, hey, look, the individual constitutional right to protect themselves and their families, that's pertinent. And on the other side, the state and local government said, hey, we got a responsibility to keep these guns out these crazy people's hands. All right, there's a public safety concern here. We need to reduce the violence in these heavily populated communities. And so the Supreme Court in the Heller case recognized that the individual right to possess a firearm for lawful self-defense, but the court also made it clear that the government still had authority to, impose some reasonable restrictions and regulations on firearms. And so the main center was this cat man, his name was Dick Heller, and he was a security guard authorized to carry a gun while protecting a federal building, but he couldn't keep the gun assembled in his own house. So it's cool for me to protect you highfalutin government officials, but when it comes to me protecting my own house, I got to disassemble the gun, take the clip out. Oh man, and I live in a horrible neighborhood. And so, they ruled in his favor, a 5-4 decision. It was close. And, so that was a massive constitutional shift. Basically, the Supreme Court said that for the first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess firearms for lawful purposes like self-defense inside the home, separate and apart from malicious service. And that was a big shift. It fundamentally changed how we saw the Second Amendment. But it didn't stop there. There was another situation. It was an old brother, somebody typed Otis. Brother Otis McDonald is a case from 2010. And he lived on the south side of Chicago. Somebody typed them YNs, okay? He was over there with them. Otis was old. He was living in a high crime area on the south side with the YNs and the criminals. But the gun laws prevented him he couldn't, the Supreme Court took the case because it needed to answer a question that affected every state in the country. Does the Second Amendment apply only against the federal government, or does it bind states and cities through the 14th Amendment? In other words, DC was different because that's regulated by the federal government. DC is I would say a provincial of the federal government, okay? A province of the federal government. But when we look at places like Illinois, that's the state. And so there's a supremacy clause that says whatever's not, they wanted to make sure that this particular amendment applies to the federal, the states. And I would say, to me, on its face, of course. And they basically said through the 14th Amendment. And so the court ruled that the Second Amendment right recognized Heller had a fundamental right, and the state and local governments had to respect that. Okay, so Otis was able to stay strapped. Okay, Otis was able to pull that thing out and have it on the coffee table in case some youngsters came running through the front door. Okay, so that's another thing. So now let's kind of get back to Chud the Builder. All right. See, his case is complicated. See, this isn't simply about whether Dalton Etherly had a constitutional right to own a firearm. The bigger issue is how he allegedly used that firearm while engaging in confrontational behavior designed to provoke emotional reactions from basically black people, strangers in public. So the prosecutors are likely, they're going to argue that this wasn't some passive self-defense. Homeboy wasn't sitting in his driveway and some YNs ran up on him. That's not what we're doing. They basically gonna say Chud intentionally created a volatile situation while armed, and he expected conflict to happen sooner or later. And when the courts examine self-defense claims, especially in cases involving provocation and intimidation or escalation, those surrounding facts become critically important. Look, common sense tells you that eventually, when you push enough people hard enough, somebody's going to stop caring about the consequences, okay? And the brother involved in the confrontation was allegedly he had PTSD. He was a former military guy, and that matters because PTSD can affect how somebody processes stress and threats and confrontation and emotional triggers. If somebody repeatedly approaches strangers and uses racial slurs and invades their personal space and intentionally provokes conflict, eventually you're going to run across the wrong one and they're going to crash out. Okay, they're going to throw caution to the wind and say, I don't care if you got a gun. And based on the early facts, that's exactly what happened. And what happened here. Okay, again, according to Etherly's own statement from the stretcher, okay, he ran up on the man. He initiated the interaction. He got close enough for the man, for the confrontation to become physical. And at some point, the man allegedly hit him. Okay. Etherly then pulled out his weapon and he shot the man multiple times, once in the stomach. The brother was life flighted to the hospital in Nashville. And I've seen some video footage where Etherly was on top of him when the cops had to get him off after he shot him. Okay, and now he's looking at him. He's got 1.5, 1.25. He's looking at a murder charge. Now, of course, again, we don't know all the facts. Okay, there's probably some more surveillance footage. I'm sure there's witness statements and forensic evidence. But the fact that this happened in front of the courthouse, it lets you know just how reckless this clown was. But again, under the self-defense law, provocation matters. Even in a stand your ground state like Tennessee, the law generally doesn't fully protect somebody who intentionally provokes a violent confrontation and then escalates it with deadly force. And that's why this case simply isn't about free speech or gun rights or standing alone. It's about what happens when somebody combines provocation, racial hostility, internet clout chasing, firearms, okay, wrap it all up into one volatile situation. The Constitution, it does protect free speech. The Constitution does protect firearm ownership. But neither amendment gives somebody unlimited protection when their actions allegedly help create the exact violence they later claim they're defending themselves against. Okay? Now, I have some video footage as always, and I want to share that with you, and I want to analyze some of it. And I hope you all appreciate the time and energy I put into that very long diatribe. But I think it's important because we need to establish the bound that we need to establish the legal framework. Okay. And I trust you all. What do I mean? I trust you. What you're going to find out is this. I try my best to make these complicated subjects easy enough for folks to understand on any grade level. Okay. Because I know it's not like there's only about 3,000 PhDs in the Black community. Or is it 5,000? About 5,000 PhDs, and I'm sure we have some rocket scientists out there. But family, I want to make sure you understand that's the importance about communication. That's why I chop my words up. I use these euphemisms and funny statements because I know it'll get your attention. But it's a very serious subject, very serious matter. But we need to have an educated population, and since our universities and schools won't do it, then doggone it, I'll take it upon myself. Now, again, I have some video footage. I'd like to take a look at some of the information that's on the internet and kind of see, let's just talk about it. Let's just take a look. Somebody take a look in the chat room. Let's just take a look at what we got. But in the meantime, make sure if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I only need about 700 more people. Okay, so if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, I need about 700 more people to get where I'm trying to get. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these videos, and I'll start off with this one right here. This is the bond hearing.
Anybody that causes any kind of disturbance at all is subject to being in direct contempt and serving 10 days in jail and a $50 fine or both. I just want you to know that we're not going to put up with any.
Shout out to Justin Case. Now, what's going on here? This is the judge. Apparently, he's a former defense lawyer. And so he's going to know the law in and out. Now he's on the bench. My understanding of his reputation is pretty no nonsense. And let's hear what he has to say. This is the bond hearing here.
Outbursts or any shenanigans today. Okay? Any questions? Okay. What do we got? State versus Dalton Etherly. I'll bring this Etherly out.
Bring them on in. Bring them in. Look who's bringing them in. Bring them in, brother. Bring them in. Ready. Don't get me back in that holding cell. No, y'all supposed to cuff his hands, but why y'all ain't cuffing him?
Good morning, Mr. Anthony. This is you're here this morning, case number 26 CR 5295. You're charged in count 1 of criminal homicide. 39.
Look at the brother looking at it. I want y'all to look at this brother eyeballing him. Look at that brother, just grilling him. I bet you won't call him a chimp. I bet you won't ask him. Brother can't wait to take off on him. Shout out to Canary Valley. Look at that. I mean, brother got them glasses on. He can see every bit of it. He waiting. Okay, you got that jumpsuit on, man. You got that. It's not gonna be an easy time. You know, just so you all know, I've done the research. The prisons in Tennessee are 44% African American. Okay, I didn't say foundational black. I'm just say we don't want that type of credit. It's 44% brother. Okay, in Tennessee. So that's a lot of brothers to dodge. That's a lot of fists to fly. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. They saying his first day. I mean, he gonna have a hard time. Somebody type hard time. Somebody type butt plug Judd in the chat room. You're gonna have a hard
13201. That's an A felony. It's punishable by 15 to 60 years in state penitentiary. Count 2 is employment of firearm during a dangerous felony. 3917. 1324. That's a D felony. Normally, that range of punishment would be 2 to 4 years in state penitentiary. However, by statute, this case is a charge is enhanced, and if you don't have any prior convictions, it's a mandatory 6-year sentence at 100%.
600%, man, you're gonna do all that time. So you got a 15 to 50 plus 6 years on all that. Damn. All that because you want to run around, you clout chasing. Damn, somebody type trashy problem. Somebody type trashy problem.
Count 3 is ag assault with serious bodily harm. 3913-102. It's a C felony. Carries a range of punishment 3 to 15 years in state penitentiary. Count 4 is reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon, also a C felony. 3 to 15 years in state penitentiary. Have you hired an attorney yet, sir? Yes, sir. You have?
I want y'all to watch this particularly close, this interaction. But first, 15, 15, 6, and 50. Add somebody that's a lot of time. That's 8. I think if you add it up, it's like 91 years. It's a difference between concurrently and consecutive. Somebody type 91. This dude, all this because you wanted to play on the internet. Damn. And didn't he used to have a black girlfriend or something like that? Something like a girlfriend. He had something like a girlfriend. I don't know. It's a sister on the internet. You know, you never could believe the internet all the way. But it was a sister on the internet saying she was both his girlfriend and his boyfriend at the same time. Okay, so, you know, I mean, Chud obviously liked black people. He liked his girlfriend, boyfriend, his brother, whatever she is. I don't want to play that on my internet channel because this is a family-friendly channel, but you all can search the internet and you all can find his girlfriend, boyfriend. Okay, y'all can find it for yourself. That's the best way in which I can describe it. But you know, he's not gonna have a hard 91 years. He gonna be booed up with somebody. I mean, damn, those are basketball numbers. 91. You know what I'm saying? He getting basketball numbers. Damn.
Jake Finley. Okay, Mr. Finley's here. You been hired yet, Mr. Finley? I know you have a prior relationship with him in other cases.
No money has changed hands.
All right.
No money has changed hands. Did you hear what his lawyer said? First of all, he came up in there and said, "Do you have a lawyer?" And he said, "Yes." And the judge is shocked. "Oh, you do? You have a lawyer?" And then he called the other. He must have saw his lawyer out there and sitting in the audience and said, "Yeah, I got a lawyer. Etherly is my lawyer." And the lawyer act like he was shocked. No money has been changed hands. Somebody type no money. Anybody who's dealt with the criminal justice system understands that depending on how much money you have, it's going to determine how much justice you get. Okay, I'm just saying. When those criminal lawyers, they need to get paid. Let me tell you what they do. They're gonna quote you a price. They're gonna say they need half up front. Okay, or they'll give you 4 or 5 days. They give you 4 or 5 days, and they'll start. They'll enroll this council record. And they're gonna say, hey, look, we're gonna need half in 60 days, and we're gonna need half before the other half, the last bit before the trial starts. Because guess what, the criminal lawyer, I'm gonna tell you about the criminal lawyer. Y'all give me a hard time. I work for free. As a personal injury lawyer, I work for free until I get paid. Okay. If I don't get paid, you don't get paid. That's how I do it. Okay. Those criminal defense lawyers, they get paid anyway. And let me tell you what my dad used. My dad was a really good criminal defense lawyer, man. That's him back there. I got him around here sometime. He used to get assigned to a lot of capital murder cases back in the 1980s. It wasn't a lot of black lawyers that did capital murder cases. And sometimes the brothers would want a black lawyer. You know what I'm saying? He would fight for him. And for my dad, if he can get somebody life instead of death, that's a win, especially here in Harris County, Houston, Texas. We put more people in on death row than any state or any other province or entity in the world. And so my dad was in the thick of that back in the 1980s when you had a bunch of racist Republican judges. I mean, they would put you under. And so he became extremely good at what he did. But he would tell me, he said, at the end of the day, I'm going to go home. You see, he would tell his clients, look, I don't know if you're going to take the plea or not. You want to try? We tried. If not, but at 5 o'clock, whatever happens, I'm going to go home. And that gentleman right there with that badge and that gun is going to take you behind those doors. You see, and you're going to go, that's where you're going to go. So it's your decision. And, the crazy part about it is when you're dealing with a criminal defense lawyer, them some cold cats, man. They've seen so many people come and go. You just another body, but you got to do that time. This man is looking at 91 years. Okay, let's say 11 years go by. This dude's going to be damn near 40. And he looking at the fact that he's never going to get out. 21 years go by. We're going to be flying and rolling like the Jetsons. Cars are going to be like EV cars. 30 years are going to go by. And this dude is going to look back at the crazy stuff he did, calling people chimps and whatnot. And he said, I went to jail for that. 40 years are going to go by. His family's going to forget him. Nobody's going to remember this dude. Okay. 50 years are going to go by. This man is going to be 60 years old, 66 years old. Right? Hair gray, face shriveled up. You see what I mean? He's gonna be institutionalized. All because what? Because he wanted to hurl the N-word. And then by the time this gets, man, the whole United States is gonna be a whole different vibe. It's gonna be browned out. Okay. You're gonna have a lot of brown people, a lot of admixture. And so even if he does get out after 50 years, it's not gonna be a whole lot of white, just straight up white folk around. Hell, it might not even be a whole lot of straight up black folks. It's going to be a lot of admixture. So this is what this man is going to come out to. Okay. But the fact that he hadn't even paid his lawyer is surprised that I'm his lawyer. All right. No money has exchanged hands. That means the lawyer hadn't got paid yet. You see? So let's keep listening.
So I'm going to appoint Mr. Finney right now to represent you. Should you make your bond and you want to hire if you make bond, you're going to need to hire Mr. Finley.
So I'm appointing him right now to represent you. But if you can afford your bond, which I haven't told you what it's going to be yet. But if you can afford that, certainly you can afford to pay Mr. Finley. That's basically the judges. This is cold-blooded judge talk right here. Let's keep listening.
Set this for preliminary hearing on the 26th of May. All right. It'll be inside the 14 days, Mr. Finley.
May 26th.
Does that work for your calendar?
I can double check, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Is the bail set?
Not yet. I'm about to do that. I want to make sure he's got an attorney and all that stuff first.
Yes, sir. May 26th.
Okay.
But
All right. Bond. Bond's not been set yet. General, do you have a position on bond today?
Yeah, Mr. Etherly is on bond on 2 cases, one from here.
Now that's going to be the district attorney or the state's attorney right there. That's the prosecutor for you all who hadn't figured it out. And he stood up to talk to I like this. The fact that everybody's following decorum lets me know that this is a no-nonsense judge. Shout out to Blaze and Triggin. When you speak to the court, you're always supposed to stand up. And sometimes I'll go to a court and I'll see like lawyers not stand up when they address the court. It's disrespectful. I never do it. I always follow decorum. I always ask permission to address the court, ask for permission to be dismissed from the court. And so when you have the DA stand up and speak like that, that lets you know that this is a no-nonsense judge who's going to follow the decorum. And the fact that he started off with the fact that, hey, if any of y'all say a goddamn thing in my court, you're going to jail for 10 goddamn days. You heard him? He didn't say it like that. But that's what he meant. I'm going to put your ass in jail. That's what the judge started out with. He said FAFO. That's what he said. Let's keep listening.
Here, one from Davidson County. Pending a hearing where the court could be informed and make a decision based on bond factors. I respectfully request to be held without bond until Monday we could have the hearing. Okay. So the court can make an informed decision. Right now it would just be arbitrary. Okay. Setting the number.
All right. Thank you, General.
And now the thing is, the judge, the DA said, I don't want him out on bond already. He's already out on bond in 2 other cases. And you see he effed up here, Judge. He's back. He's a troublemaker. You watch the internet. I know you have a grandchild. Oh, that's Chud the Builder. And your grandchild has showed you. I don't want him out. Okay. And he said, and so the DA says, I don't want him to have a bond at all. But this particular bond is quite prohibitive. Now, I didn't hear the language. I don't know if it's a cash bond. I don't think they would put 1.25 million cash bond. But typically what happens is if you have 125, 1 million, is it 1,250,000? Is that what it is? Is that what the bond is? 1.2 million? Whew. 1,250,000. He's gonna have to come up with 10% of that. So he's gonna have to get a bondsman to put that money up. Okay, and you know, if he's able to get out, let's listen. Let's listen.
When the court sets bond, if we have a bond, when we have a bond hearing, we'll consider TCA 4011-118.
I want y'all to look at Chud the Builder's eyes when he hears this bond. Listen, just pay attention. Somebody type the eyes in the chat room.
The overriding intent of that statute now is to protect the public interest and public safety. Mr. Eathley's on bond apparently on several other matters when this matter was allegedly committed. I'm looking at an A and really a super D, a C, really 3 C's and an A really for tracking kind of purposes. It's pretty serious.
Class A felony and Class C felonies. That's what he's saying.
Yes.
Your Honor mentioned criminal homicide. I thought that was
Did I say homicide? I meant to say attempted criminal homicide if I didn't.
Okay.
I thought I did, but that's still an A felony.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What you gonna say, little defense attorney? What are you gonna say? You got the worst client in America right now, sir. What magical words are you gonna say? Look at the brother. Look at that brother eyeballing him. Ooh-wee. Looking like Raphael from the Ninja Turtles, just eyeballing it. Boy, he wish you would. Somebody say, I wish you would. I wish you would. He wish you would. Damn.
We're gonna have a bail
I'm
hearing.
gonna set just a bond right now after we have our bail hearing. Then I'll let you make all the arguments. We can go through all the factors in the statute and see if that gets amended up or down. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to set initial bond at 1.25 million.
Ooh.
Based upon the fact of how many people were in the courtyard. We're here at the courthouse.
Did you see the dude closed his eyes and the defense lawyer shook his head like, you ain't never getting out. I'm never gonna get paid. Would y'all like to see that? I'm not laughing at anyone's pain. Okay. I'm not laughing at anyone's pain. Okay. However, I'm saying you wanted to chimp out, you know. And apparently the looked like the bailiff knew what was going on. He said, let me go ahead and stand close to this dude. I wouldn't want him to chip out and you know, on the TV. We don't want to embarrass the judge. But did y'all see the eyes? I'm gonna let y'all see one more time. I want y'all to see just what he did. Okay. Look at his eyes, and then I want you to watch the subtle shake. the subtle shake of the defense lawyer's head.
Up or down, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to set initial bond at $1.25 million. Based upon the fact of how many people were in the courtyard, we're here at the courthouse, and the seriousness of all these felonies, and his bond status. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So the 26th at 9 o'clock, I'm sorry, the 21st at 9 o'clock for a bond hearing, and then the 26th at 9 for a preliminary hearing right here. Does that work for everybody's calendar? General, does that work for the state?
Yes.
All right.
They did good.
Just for the court's information, and
Got us
Mr.
one.
Finley, the state is going to request and file a source hearing when and if there's an attempt to make bond.
Okay. Is there any objection of us taking all those matters up at the bond hearing on the 21st?
No, yeah.
Mr. Finley, do you have any objection to doing it that way? That's the most efficient way, I think.
He ain't paid me yet.
Judge, we'll try and have everything lined up for the court.
Okay.
He didn't pay the judge. He didn't pay the lawyer yet.
Anything else, Mr. Finley, from you today?
No, sir.
All right. From the
Hey,
state?
what else you want me to say,
Okay.
man? What else you want me to say?
That'll conclude these proceedings today, okay?
Thank you.
I didn't want
Recess.
to do the content.
Go ahead, recess, keep your seats.
Take him back. Get him on back. Get him out. Next up. Ooh-wee. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. All because you wanted to play on the internet. All because you wanted to be a super alpha male on the internet. Well, that's what he got into. That's what he did. He did it to himself. Let's go ahead and look at some more of this footage. And let's check out. So you know, we dealing in it. We gotta let's take a look. I got some other folk on here to help.
Also known as Dalton Etherly, has been charged with attempted murder after a shooting at a Clarksville, Tennessee courthouse yesterday. The altercation was captured on video. Take a look.
Oh my God.
Look at that. Look, see that? That was. I want y'all to look at that. This is Chud jumping on top of the other person. Now you gotta be real stupid to fight somebody at the courthouse. I mean, you got to be just as stupid as you could be. Well, look at the little video right here.
Dalton Etherly has been charged with attempted murder after a shooting at a Clarksville, Tennessee courthouse yesterday. The altercation was...
That. Now, that's them over there in the background. You can see it right there to the right side of my screen. And that's a lady right in front of both the gentlemen up here in the far right middle of the video. All right, so watch her scatter out the way.
Was captured on...
Boom, and you see what happened? It looks like Chud the Builder picked the guy up and hit him down. Now, I want you to look at the placement of that Stetson hat, and pretty soon you're going to see a police officer run from the left to the right, and that's, I don't know what that is over there, okay? But the officer runs over there to get something, okay? So I don't know if the firearm was dislodged from Chud's hand, okay, and that's why he commenced to pick the guy up and slam. Maybe the guy hit him, took the gun, and flinged it away. I don't know, okay, but let's look.
On video, take a look.
See what the cop did? You see what the cop did? The cop ran over, and he secured what seems to be the weapon. That's what it looks like to me. That's only because normally they would go straight for the people who and break up the fight, but the cop went to secure the weapon.
Oh my God.
I believe. Look at that. See how the fat cop in the back looked like he went over there to secure the weapon?
Holy here.
Okay? And that woman
Somebody
right there in the
got shot.
pink, with the pink skirt, that's a black woman, and she was apparently with the gentleman who was, you know, attacked and shot by Chud, well, you know, Dalton. Okay.
Yeah.
Who does that? Okay, see where he's running over there? That's the weapon.
In between.
They got him.
Oh my God.
And my man is laid out on the ground. To the right, you can see the brother laid out on the ground on his back. Okay. Let's keep looking.
Is someone down? I just see the one guy.
Oh my God. Oh, he's dead.
He's dead.
Oh.
They think my man is laid out. Look at the brother right there, laid out on the ground. Over there, they think this dude is. So that, I mean, that's.
He's dead.
Look at that.
Oh shit. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And then
Someone called him because
because
I'm recording.
I'm calling Tim.
Ambulance is on the way.
During the altercation, you can tell that Chud was on top of the individual
Yeah.
during the scuffle. But Chud gave a very different account.
Now I want you all to listen to what Chud the Builder said happened. And this is stupid. First of all, he has never seen the first 48. You never talk. He's live streaming this. I want you to hear him live streaming this whole thing.
To authorities.
I walked up to him because they were pointing at me. They were laughing. They were pointing at me, and I said, "What's up, guys? How y'all doing?"
I walked up to them. So he initiated the confrontation. I walked up to them because they were laughing and pointing at me. You walked up to them and armed, and so therefore you initiated the confrontation. Not like they walked up to you. So anybody saying some guy walked up on Chud the Dud, these people over there sitting in the shade minding their business, and you walked up on them.
I said, "Y'all like the new suit?" He said, "Walk away from me." I walked away.
He told you, the brother told him to walk away. This is him admitting this. You the dumbest client. Defense lawyers don't like it. Let me tell you something about them goddamn criminal defense lawyers. They go figure out what they tell you to shut up. Somebody type "shut up" in the chat room. Don't say nothing. Don't say anything to the cops. Okay. Any good defense lawyer say don't say nothing. Invoke your right to remain silent and do it. Okay. They tell you to shut up. And what a good defense lawyer is going to do is go figure out, he's going to go to your court hearing. He's going to look at the DA's file and see what evidence the DA has and see what the DA knows. And then he's going to come back and tell you what the DA knows. And then he might never ask you the full story. Because at the point where you tell your defense lawyer the full story, then he's required as an officer of the court to reveal any information, and sometimes he may have to withdraw if he knows too much. Okay, yeah, I killed him. You can't say that now. You know, it's you know. I mean, I'm telling you how it's supposed to go, not how it is. But what I'm trying to tell you is a good defense lawyer is going to figure out what the DA knows, come back and tell you what the DA knows, and then you all come up with your defense on that. You don't have to testify against yourself. Okay. Now, so when you got an idiot like this who's live streaming what he did, his side of the story, y'all walked up on him and I just said, "Hey, you guys like my suit?" And then all of a sudden, this guy out the blue wanted to hit me and I had to defend myself. Now, it sounds good at the time. Okay, it sounds really good at the time. But even here on this internet, you know, a few days later, it sounds like, dog, you initiated that. Shout out to Fitzgerald. I waited for this. So this is stupid. Somebody type stupid. So we've confirmed that Chud the Builder is stupid. Okay, this open air racist is stupid. That's what we've concerned. Shout out to Fitzgerald.
He came back up to me. He literally said, "I have PTSD. I feel like I'm in." He said, "You start saying all that chimp out to me, I'm gonna hit you." He hit me, started wailing on me, even after I had to defend myself by shooting him.
He hit me after. So let me get this straight, sir. You're telling me that you this big monster, this big who's shorter than you, that we see you picking him up and slamming him. Did you not see? He didn't see the video footage. And this is why you're supposed to shut up. I mean, look, I'm glad he spoke. I'm glad this makes the DA's job a lot easier. I'm glad he spoke. But I'm saying, okay, if you ever arrested, just shut up. Don't say nothing. Arrest me, take me to jail. Go ahead. I'm not resisting. I want to go to jail. Let's go on down to the county lockup. Praise God. I don't want to I'm talking to the cops on the way down. How y'all doing? It's great weather. Man, you see what I mean? Because see, their job is to try to lull you into a confession. But if you talking to them and filling the air with bullshit, it frustrates them. You see what I'm saying? Whatever the cops said, don't believe nothing, okay? And the minute they read you your Miranda rights, everything they use after that they can and will use against you. Hell yeah, they can use stuff beforehand. And then they had those little video cameras on their chest. So, you know, it's evidence. It's a excited utterance. It's something you're saying at the time. So a lot of information gets in. But anyway, shut up, which is what Chud the Dud didn't do.
He's still wailing on me.
In the video, you can tell that the woman with the man is attempting to walk away. It seems that they were in that spot previously, and Chud admitted himself that he walked up to those individuals, and then they told him.
Now imagine you chilling out, minding your business at the courthouse, and this dude, you sitting in the shade with your woman, and this clown walks up on you. That was an unavoidable situation. The brother, it was nowhere for him to go. It's not like he could have got up and walked away. His woman was with him. You see what I mean? And in one of those stand your ground states, he literally had a right to stand his ground. You're minding your business, sitting under a shade tree in the middle of May in hot ass Tennessee, and this crazy fool. I mean, how do you avoid that? I mean, and then you end up, you know, a few minutes later, you end up stretched out on the ground, shot. I mean, just think about that. All because this crazy white boy wants to play redneck revival. You understand what I'm saying? I just want, how do you even avoid white America? You should be ashamed of yourself. Truly, you should truly be ashamed. This is who you create, this clown. You got a couple minding their business, sitting under a shade tree, and this dude rolls up on them, picks a fight, and shoots the man in the belly. And then you all got the nerve to send Chud the asshole $200,000 on a GoFundMe. And the brother who got shot, the veteran, right? We love the military. You got $35,000 for him
to leave, and then Chud in the video is on top of the individual shooting him. Chud also received a gunshot wound, but he shot himself. Now he sits in a local jail, charged with attempted murder.
Yeah, he shot himself. I want y'all to understand that. So he's standing sideways. He pulls his weapon out, and this clown shoots himself. He shoots himself through the arm. You understand what I'm saying? So anyway, it's just horrible situation. But you know, let's talk about this GoFundMe. I want to talk about this shameful GoFundMe when I get a chance to. Let me see if I can pull it up. Okay.
Black people minding their own business and then proceed to pew one of them in the name of freedom of speech and protecting your rights as an American. You can now raise $170,000. This is Chud the Builder, or Dalton Etherly. He is a 28-year-old streamer whose streams consist of him doing the exact fucking things I talked about. And if you want an idea of the people that are donating to this campaign, let me read out to you some of the messages. Love your work, man. You're like Martin Luther King Jr., but for white people. And I love that. We need to teach blacks to stop chirping out over words. It's just a word, period. They should have never been freed from slavery. I said what I said. This is what happens when you let wild animals into the streets. It's a battle of good versus evil. Don't let this hiccup slow you down. Meaning the good is Chud the Builder, screaming slurs at people in public, minding their own business, and the evil being people who are just black. Whites need to wake up to reality and shake this delusion of empathy. Thanks for taking one for the team, Dalton. Hoping for the best. By the way, this is a Christian site.
I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Think about that. These people are proud of this man. This is and this is where we are. We are living in a hostile racial environment, and you know, there's really no getting around that. We've been here before, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more. But let's look at some more videos.
I thought you white people always say we support the troops. You hated Colin Kaepernick because he's took a knee during the national anthem, and you said he's disrespecting the troops. However, this white man shot a troop, a veteran. Then you give him $100,000. To all my white friends out there, can you make your mind up? Do we support troops or do we not?
I think it's more than that at this point. Okay, I think it's much more than that at this point. But you know, so this is where we are. I'll point out a couple more videos and then we'll get to it. But again, we're living in that environment. As a matter of fact, Chud the Builder is not the only one. All right, you got other these overt.
Go from this.
So, what are you doing in my country? What are you doing in my country? Answer the fucking question. What are you doing in my country? Answer the question. What are you doing in my country, nigga? Yeah, back up, nigga. Yeah, back up, nigga. Answer the fucking question. What you doing in my country? Oh, you need me to speak your language?
Now, you see this? this is this overt race of these. They're emboldened. You see what I mean? We'll talk about that in a minute.
To this.
I'm just here to talk. I'm not trying to get drunk, bro. I just want to get things done over with. All right, you're gonna apologize.
Now this is probably in California somewhere because this dude has a Berkeley shirt on.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll obviously apologize to everyone, bro. I will apologize to absolutely everybody. Come on, nigga.
Why are they always using the N-word and we not around? Why don't y'all use your own racial epithets? Leave our racial. We stop using our. Use your own racial epithets. Don't y'all have your own racial epithets? Invent your own. Okay, make up one. Okay, just leave us alone. Why everybody's an N-word? How do we get like? Why is everybody an N-word? Why? What's up with that? I mean, let's just think about it. Are we always that on y'all mind? We are not even around there anywhere. That does not look like a black community or a black neighborhood. You have on a Berkeley shirt, sir, with some colorful tennis shoes. That's not us. You're not us. Why? That man's shoes look just like this embroidered tapestry behind my head. You see how colorful that is? My wife told me to put that up there because it makes the scenery less dreary. But now my vision is telling me that picture look just like this dude's shoes right here. It's not this is not our community. Why are we involved in this? What did we do? What did we do? I don't know. Let's keep watching.
What's up? I just want to apologize. What's up? I'm apologize. What's up? You apologize. Okay? Stop. Get on your fucking knees, kid. Yeah, kid. What the fuck you think?
They might have saved his life. They got the white boy down on it.
You ain't talking to elderly people like that? Are you dumb? I truly am sorry. What the fuck your thought? Excuse me, it's enough.
This is mama. Go inside. Go inside.
Hey, stupid ass. What you? Off my property now.
Just look at the state of him. Constantly apologizing, saying he just wants to be done with this, after he literally went out of his way to be racist and harassing an old man that did nothing to him. But this goes to show you this.
Well, he was calling old man names and whatnot. And then these youngsters rolled up on him and checked him. And then he jumped down on his knees. Okay.
This is what most racists will do in real life when confronted by people who are actually about it.
Actually about it. They wasn't even about it. They was a little bit about it. But, you see people stand up, but this is overt racism. And, we understand why. We understand why we're dealing with racism. Okay. We're in the season of racism. And the reason we have so much racism to deal with is because, of the current political climate. All right. Y'all check this out.
Of every day.
To Basil's point, they put it in writing, right? You are the one who studied Project 2025. Isn't all that's happening more about us as a country than it is about Donald Trump? America knew what it was voting for, and look what they got.
Yeah, Trump has exploited the moral rot at the center of the American psyche for decades. Especially over the last decade as he walked in here. He's pulled out and appealed to the lower impulses of everyday Americans. He's now, as we see with his push on gerrymandering and the way he's attacked DEI, aka fundamental civil rights, he's been probably the most openly anti-black president in modern history, frankly. And what we see here, especially with this ruling, there has been no clearer case made for the necessity of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 than how quickly these southern states immediately moved to wipe out and dilute black power. You have instantly, within hours, DeSantis signed those 4 additional seats that would take down black majority districts. You have Tennessee now last week wiping out a black majority district. You have Louisiana set to do the same. Alabama just got greenlit by SCOTUS to do the same. And then you have now, as Basil, you mentioned, Trump at the same time simultaneously almost unilaterally raising the black unemployment rate because people don't talk enough about how nearly 20% of the federal workforce was black before Trump walked into office. And it just so happens that this spike in unemployment happens to coincide with an assault on DEI, not just in the federal workforce, but in the private sector with his executive orders to.
Now, I appreciate this brother going into this detailed explanation, but basically what he's saying is because of the current administration, it's emboldened the racists. Okay, now whether you believe Donald Trump is a racist or not, that doesn't matter. Okay, because the racists believe that Donald Trump is a racist. Okay, that's it. No different than Ronald Reagan and some of the other folks. Okay, so that's what it's the environment that it's the political environment that sparked up these yahoos and got them cutting up and being overtly racist. So we'll let the brother finish speaking.
To basically get people to dissuade private sector folks to hire black people. And like you said, and unfortunately, you actually had me on for the first time I was ever on TV was Project 2025 segment with Ruth Ben-Ghiat in 2024. And we were talking about this and talking about the fact that in that paper, in that playbook, they were talking about DEI, they were talking about dismantling all of these rights, and right now we are living in the culmination of Leonard Leo's Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation's policy playbook vision, culminating here in this moment where black power is eroded. But I do think that some of it is going to backfire. We could talk about that maybe later, but I think if you have to dilute your own districts in order to redraw some of these maps. So
the only silver lining to Project 2025 is we got to have you on TV and got to know
the lower impulse.
Stop flirting with that young man, lady. Leave him alone. Okay. But anyway, so again, what my whole point is that, whether you think Donald Trump is racist or not, this political environment that we living in has got these yahoos all sparked up. Okay. And, for the most part, this is something that we're going to have to deal with probably for the next 20, 30 years. Somebody type 20, 30. This is what you're going to deal with. Okay? So that's why I tell you all to rebuild. Black folks need to rebuild their institutions. But just because I want to keep you all's attention, I want to go ahead and proceed with the actual lesson. The actual, we did our opening. We saw the video. I want to give you all some historical context, which is what I like to do. Okay, see, the deeper, and again, if you learn something, I should earn something. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. If you have not subscribed to the channel, matter of fact, double check. Take the opportunity right now to double check to make sure that you have subscribed to the channel, because unfortunately, some of my subscribers are being removed because, me and YouTube have a touchy relationship. You understand what I'm saying? And so I need you guys to make sure you have subscribed to the channel. In fact, I need about another 34 people to subscribe to the channel, and that'll get me to the next 100 that I need. But so let's try to put this in context, okay? Y'all bear with me. It's going to take me a minute to get there. But the deeper issue underneath all of this is what made Chud, we'll call him Chud the incarcerated, feel comfortable enough to walk around in public hurling racial slurs at black people in broad daylight. And what makes anybody think you can walk up to black people and call them chimps and N-words and then live stream it on the internet? Shout out to that Be Me 8087, right? What makes, somehow they believe it's acceptable behavior. What mentality, where does that come from? It doesn't come out of nowhere. White folk don't suddenly wake up one morning and decide to openly antagonize an entire racial group unless they believe the social and political climate gives them permission to do that. And right now, whether people want to admit it or not, we're living through a political and cultural moment where open racism has become more socially visible and more publicly tolerated than it had been for several decades. Okay. And there's a strong contingent of white Americans. They feel like they're losing their country. Okay, they're losing their cultural dominance. They feel like they're losing their political control and losing their demographic power. And because of that fear, you have white folk becoming more openly racist in their rhetoric and politics and anti-black behavior. And that has to do a lot with the fact that the election of Donald Trump as president for the second term in 2024. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump is a racist, and I've said this before because I know we got a lot of people who are sensitive. I don't know Donald Trump. I don't know his personal thoughts. Whether Donald Trump is racist or not is not the point. The only thing that matters is that the racists believe that Donald Trump is racist, or that at least they believe he's sympathetic to their racist frustrations and racist worldview. And because they perceive him that way, along with his administration, his election and political success make them feel validated in being openly racist. See, in their little rodent-like minds, if somebody they associate with being a racist sympathizer can become the president of the United States, then they feel emboldened to become more open and aggressive with their own racial attitudes. And that's important because politics isn't just about law and elections. Politics also shapes culture, behavior, and what people think they can publicly get away with. And when people feel politically empowered, they become bolder. And right now, you can clearly see that boldness across the country. Chud the Builder is the only example. You've got people openly posting racist rhetoric online. Nick, the Mexican Fuentes, Charlie the Kirk, who engaged in openly anti-Black and anti-Jewish commentary. You got ICE openly attacking Hispanics and Africans and Muslims and anybody that looks foreign. Okay? You got folk online pushing conspiracy theories and this whole white replacement and cultural decline. And I want to talk to my Black audience for a minute. I want to talk to y'all for a minute. I want you to listen to me very carefully. When you see open Jewish or anti-Jewish rhetoric increasing in a society, you need to understand something very important. Historically, people who are openly anti-Jewish are almost always anti-Black too. And that includes whites and Arabs. See, that type of hatred does not stay isolated in one group. Once somebody starts embracing racial or ethnic supremacy, eventually that hostility spreads to everybody they consider the other, especially Blacks and Jews. And that's why we Black Americans should be very, very careful about casually co-signing or even aligning ourselves with extremists like Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and the young Haitian American conservative commentator, Candace Owens. Somebody type delineate in the chat room, okay? Candace, the Haitian Owens, right? She's not FBA. But bottom line is, history shows us, the foundational Black Americans, that those anti-Jewish racist folk always circle back around to anti-Black racism. And at the same time, we're watching immigration become another flashpoint in America. You got these mass federal agents and immigration raids dominating the news. People are detaining based on perceptions about language and accents and immigrations and status, and entire political movements built around fear of a demographic change. And whether people support those policies or not, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying this is what we're dealing with, okay? The larger reality is impossible to ignore. Race and identity politics are more pervasive than ever. And once again, they sit in dead center at the center of American public life. And none of this is new. America has gone through periods of intense open racism before. One of the clearest examples came after Reconstruction in 1877. I'm not talking about after your grandma house got burnt down. That's not the type of Reconstruction I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Reconstruction of the South. That's what they call it, okay? And that lasted from the time the war ended to about 1877. And let me break this down. In 1870, I want to tell y'all that I want y'all to understand. Somebody type 1877 in the chat room. There was a political deal to change the entire direction of the United States. Remember, Lincoln got shot, right? And after the Civil War ended in 1865, the federal Union troops remained stationed throughout the South during what was called the Reconstruction era. Okay, and their job was to protect the newly freed Black folk and enforce federal law. We just fought a war against these people. Okay, they had the people still, they were still, the Confederate resistance was real. They wanted to make sure that the Black people were able to vote and hold office and own property and participate in life without being violently suppressed by these former Confederates. And so for angry white men, okay, and for a very short time period, roughly 12 years, Reconstruction actually worked. Black Americans were elected to public office. You had black folk in Congress. We were mayors, sheriffs, etc., all across the South. Black communities began building schools and businesses and churches and farms and political organizations. We were builders. You have former black people who were enslaved were beginning to participate in American democracy in ways that them white folk had never thought was going to be able to happen. But a lot of these Southern whites, they hated it. They hated it with a passion. These were former Confederate soldiers, and they viewed Reconstruction and the military occupation, you know, and they got angry. And so you had the white supremacists like the KKK. They began using terror, scaring people, dropping bombs on people's front porches and burning crosses and lynchings and beatings and basically using intimidation to try to regain control of Southern politics. So then what happened, there was an election of 1876. Somebody typed 1876, and it was between Rutherford B. Hayes, a Republican candidate, and Samuel J. Tilden. Now, Tilden actually won the popular vote, and it appeared to have enough electoral votes to become the president. But several of the southern states, including Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, they submitted some disputed electoral votes because both parties accused each other of fraud and intimidation and voter suppression. Now, look, the country was already on edge. We already just had a war, okay? All right, it was just a war. It was ready to pop off again. It was ready to pick their guns. It was called the constitutional crisis because nobody knew who actually won the presidency. So behind closed doors, you know, you had Republicans and Democrats, and they were negotiating what became the Compromise of 1877, okay? And the deal was simple. The Democrats would allow Rutherford B. Hayes to become president. In exchange, the Republicans would withdraw the remaining federal troops from the South and effectively end construction. Remember, the Republicans were anti-slavery and the Democrats were pro-slavery at that time. So basically, look, we'll let you be president, Mr. Rutherford B. Hayes. We Democrats, who are at this time racist and prejudiced and pro-slavery, all you got to do is take these. All you got to do is take these Union troops out of the South. It's been 12 years. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Okay, we've gotten used to it. We've gotten used to fingers crossed behind their back. We'll deal with them. It's everything's up. So Rutherford B. Hayes, this man, he was into his own personal. Of course, he wanted to be president. Hell with those N words. Yeah, that's right. It's been 12 years. They're kind of right, guys. I mean, you know, they can't handle themselves by now. I mean, what else are we going? Are we going to keep our Union troops stationed, our Massachusetts boys stationed down south ever? Oh, no. You see? So that's what happened. So they let Rutherford B. Hayes assume the presidency. He removed the Union troops. And that one political deal changed the lives of millions of Black Americans overnight. Once the federal troops left in 1877, Black folk were basically abandoned. They were left to the mercy of these racist white Southern folk who were mad, okay? And without any federal enforcement, the white supremacists' violence just exploded. They started taking land, bombing people, passing bias laws, segregation laws, voting restrictions. They would charge you just to come vote. You've been voting for 12 years, and now you got to pay a whole mess of money just to vote. They had literacy tests. Yeah, we need you to recite the Constitution backwards in Latin, and then you can vote. Are you kidding me? Who can do that, right? All these laws were designed to strip Black Americans of our political power that we had gained, and groups like the KKK were more aggressive because they understood there would no longer be any soldiers, nobody standing up for the Black folk. So when Black people talk about backroom deals, okay, in American history, that's one of the biggest examples. Imagine where we would be if they left the troops there for another 50 or 60 years and just stationed Union troops there, right? We'd have been able to keep the peace and progress. But, you know, in order to peacefully settle that dispute, the presidential election, they basically sacrificed Black folks' well-being. And a lot of Black people died, okay? They effectively traded Black civil rights and Black progress a way for this one man to be president. It was a political compromise. So Reconstruction ended nearly a century of segregation, racial terrorism, disenfranchisement, Jim Crow oppression. All of that follows. And this is why historians call that the compromise of 1877. In other words, we're going to throw the blacks under the bus. And it is one of the most consequential political deals in American history. Now, the racial climate became so bad, even the mainstream American culture openly celebrated racist propaganda. Another president, Woodrow Wilson, right? He famously screened the movie Birth of a Nation at the White House in 1915. 1915, okay? And so this is, about 30 years later, it portrayed black men as savage predators and glorified the KKK as heroic defenders of white America. And the movie was essentially racial propaganda designed to fuel a fear and resentment and hostility toward black people. And because of it, because the president saw it in the White House, it helped revive the KKK. So now let's move forward 4 years later, right? All of that racial hostility eventually exploded into Red Summer of 1919. You had just think about that. You got white mobs attacking black communities, prosperous black communities across the country. Black neighborhoods were burned to the ground. Black businesses were destroyed. Black veterans returning from World War I were attacked for daring to believe they deserve equal treatment after fighting for America overseas. And so you had thousands of black business owners and landowners and successful business citizens were lynched and driven out or economically destroyed. And here's the important part people often leave out. Those white mobs weren't just randomly attacking black people for no reason. Okay, now that was happening, but we also have to consider they were specifically targeting black economic success. Somebody type money in the chat room, okay? They targeted black towns and black banks and black farms, black landowners, black professionals, black business districts, because economics sits at the center of white supremacy racism. The goal has always been economic control. Who owns the land? Who controls the labor? Who gets the contracts? Who gets the loans? Who gets access to opportunity? That's what the fight has always been about. Now, before 1920, at the height of black land ownership in the early 20th century, black people collectively own roughly 15 million acres of land in the United States. 15 million. That's the equivalent of New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I believe, I forget the other one up north. But think about that, 15 million acres. In just 55 years, more or less, after slavery officially ended in 1865, black Americans had already built hundreds of towns and communities across the country, including Nicodemus, Kansas, one of the oldest surviving black towns in America. We had built church, schools, farms, banks, insurance companies. My great-great-grandfather, George Washington Jones Jr., or Sr., I'm sorry, he was a lawyer, and he was the first black county attorney of Nicodemus, Kansas. So I found that out about 3 years ago. And I've told that story a couple of times. He was a black man from Mississippi, left the rural South. He was born in slavery, left the South, graduated from HBCU, actually, in Mississippi. Then he studied under another lawyer, became a lawyer, and then moved up to Nicodemus, Kansas, where he passed away right around by my age, actually. But it was thousands of towns like that, okay? Unfortunately, a lot of black folk was out of slavery. They weren't even literate, but they built so much. We were builders, okay? Somebody type builders in the chat room. Now, around the turn of the century, well, let me say it like this. The scary part for white folk at the time is that black people had already demonstrated, when given even limited opportunity, that we would build for ourselves. So they didn't wait around we didn't wait around for government handouts. We built towns, we acquired land, we created businesses, we established historically black colleges and universities, we developed trade networks and professional classes. And despite these enormous obstacles, we did it. And if black Americans, think about it, if they had just left us alone to continue building economically, that's what these white elites feared. Black community would become more economically independent and politically influential than we had already were, that we were on that path. And so when you study racial violence in American history, especially events like Red Summer, the Tulsa race massacre, the destruction of Black Wall Street, the Wilmington coup of 1898, and attacks on prosperous Black communities throughout the South and the Midwest, you begin to realize these events were deeply tied to economics. Somebody typed money in the chat room. And so white supremacy racism wasn't just about personal hatred. It was also about protecting economic dominance and suppressing competing economic power. And that's why racial anxiety in America is often tied to economics and demographic fear. Today, Black folk only represent about 14% of the population, and we control 2% of the overall wealth of this country. And yet, despite that imbalance, many white Americans still feel like they're losing their country culturally, politically, or socially. They fear fuels it fuels that reactionary politics and racial resentment and return of a more openly racial public behavior. So when you see somebody like Chud the Builder, okay, openly provoking Black people in public, understand that he didn't appear out of thin air. He exists within a larger political and cultural climate where racial hostility has become more visible again. America's gone through periods like this before. I talked about it: Civil War, Reconstruction, during Jim Crow, Red Summer, the Civil Rights era, and now we're clearly entering another one of those periods where openly racial tension is once again rising to the surface. History moves in cycles. There's an ebb and a flow to racial politics in America, and right now we are absolutely in one of those periods, and where open racism is flowing back into public life again. Now, let me just, to the average white racist dude, being openly racist feels great. And it's not just the whites. That Ashley Gonzalez, you heard what she said on her little video? She loved saying, she felt liberated saying the N-word. Just letting them hard ER flies, right? Like Patriot missiles over Iran, And for my redneck delegation, shout out to all the white supremacists who are looking at the video. Shout out to all y'all. Y'all subscribe to the channel too. You're gonna learn something. I don't care about how you feel anyway. I'm gonna tell you. But to them, letting that hard ER fly is, man, it's like a wads of saliva soaked chewing gum tobacco juice flying out the front porch of granddaddy's trailer on the swarms of horse flies buzzing around a pile of horse shit sitting in grassless barren front yard. It feels great to them. You understand? And although all of that may feel good to these folk, the problem with open racism is that it exposes white supremacy racism at its rawest, ugliest, and most undeniable form. That is a problem. Okay? Somebody type problem. You like, well, what you mean? Where you going with this, Uncle D? That is a problem. Okay? Now, before I go any further, y'all remember that time period after Barack Obama was elected president when we were living in a post-racial era? Y'all remember that? Cable news pundits and personalities. I specifically remember a gentleman named Chris Matthews who used to work for MSNBC. He said, we're living in a post-racial America. That lasted for about a week and a half after Obama got elected, right? Because it disappeared because America elected the first Black president. But I knew back then that was nonsense. I lived in Texas and Louisiana long enough to see that the Confederate flags were still up. Okay, I seen it with my own eyes. And just because you put a black face on the White House didn't magically change the culture and the history and the racial structure of the United States. America didn't suddenly stop being America because Barack Obama became president. Electing Obama no more erased the racial foundations of this country than taking a white kid and calling him Michael Jackson and having him sing Beat It, like that would suddenly make him Michael Jackson or the king of pop. The image may change, the presentation may change, but the underlying structure remains the same. And that's what many people either didn't understand or didn't want to admit. But here's the thing. Before the current era, white supremacy racism in America operated within plausible deniability. All my good spellers out there, somebody type plausible deniability, okay? That was that is white supremacy racism's greatest strength. Whenever black people pointed out racism, white folks would say, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore. You're just making excuses. Or you know, you're race baiting. Somebody type race baiting, right? Everything isn't about race, right? The power of white supremacy wasn't just the racism itself. It was the ability to deny it while still benefiting from it. Basically, they gaslighting you. They tell, oh, no, you know, what are you talking about, right? And it worked best when it stayed covert and institutional and hidden inside of systems and hiring practices and contracts and school boards and neighborhoods and banks and policing and political structures. But see, here's the problem. Once racism becomes overt and open and too visible and undeniable, it becomes a liability. Somebody type liability in the chat room. See, people can point it out. They can document it. They can expose it. And once people can clearly see it, it becomes much harder to defend, damn near impossible. Only a fool would tell you these days that racism doesn't exist when you got this clown running around calling people chimps and telling them not to chimp out and calling them the N-word, right? You would be an idiot right now to say racism, we don't live in a racially hostile environment. You got people like Nick Fuentes on the internet talking bad about damn near everybody, okay? But see, that's one reason America spent so much of the 20th century trying to clean up its racial image internationally. Listen, during the Cold War, that's roughly from 1947 until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. America's enemies, Russia specifically, or Soviet Union, constantly pointed to the racism in the United States as proof that this American democracy, this freedom for all, was hypocritical. I mean, think about it. The Soviet Union, Communist China, and after 1940, they were brutal, you know. But these other socialist governments, they say it's one thing. Yeah, we know what we got going on, but look what you're doing over there. And they would use images of lynchings and segregation and police brutality and racial discrimination as propaganda to undermine America's claim that it was the leader of the free world. How can you be the free world and you're oppressing those black people that have been there for hundreds of years to help y'all build it? And so they would basically say, how can America lecture the world about freedom and democracy while you're watching as your black citizens are being burned out of their homes and terrorized? And see, that wasn't just propaganda with no effect. It actually embarrassed the hell out of the United States government, and it forced America to make changes because racism was damaging the country's reputation on a world stage. You see, you are literally the pot calling the kettle black. And so during the Cold War, American leaders, they realized, damn, this segregation and this racial violence is becoming a national security problem because the communist countries were using Americans' treatment of black people to recruit allies in Africa and Asia and Latin America and the developing world. And let me listen. Are y'all listening? There ain't nobody talking. Look, historians have documented that under the several presidents' administration, whether we talk about President Harry Truman from 1945 to 1953, Dwight Eisenhower 1953 to 1961, JFK 1961, 1962, and Lyndon B. Johnson 63 to 69, they increasingly supported civil rights reforms. And it had a lot to do with the fact that the Soviet Union was using propaganda about how horrible America was to make us look weak and hypocritical and morally corrupt. And here's the thing, one of the clearest examples after World War II, 1945, America had just defeated Nazi Germany while publicly claiming it was defending freedom and democracy around the world. But black soldiers, after they came home from fighting fascism overseas, it was still facing segregation and racial violence and discrimination throughout the U.S., especially in places like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Georgia, and Texas. And so you had Soviet Union newspapers and radio stations and international propaganda outlets. They was constantly highlighting America's lynchings and Jim Crow segregation during the late 40s and 50s. It embarrassed the United States in front of the newly decolonized African and Asian nations. And that's one of the reasons that Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981 on July 26, 1948 in Washington, D.C., desegregating the United States military. It was embarrassing. See? There were more reasons behind that decision, but there were also geopolitical reasons behind that decision. Shout out to my man, Fuquan. American leaders understood that. They we look ridiculous out here. We look stupid. Somebody type stupid as hell in the chat. We look stupid. You know, here we are saying we stand for freedom, and the black soldiers that just fought and died are still serving in a segregated military. You see, you look stupid. How free to who? That's why, look, even in the famous Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education, it was influenced partly by the Cold War politics. The Soviet Union said, y'all look stupid. And that case was decided on May 17, 1954, less than 9 years after World War II. And it involved the school desegregation in Topeka, Kansas. Y'all know about this, but the federal government filed briefs. The federal government, filed briefs and explained that segregation was damaging America's image abroad and helping Soviet propaganda. Look, Alabama, you idiots. Look, Louisiana, look, Georgia. You all are making us look like idiots. You are messing up our reputation on the world stage. We get it. We understand that you don't like it. We get you don't like the N-word, you don't like the blacks, but you're messing up the money. You're making us look like idiots. Okay? And that's why the U.S. government had to file briefs. You know what I'm saying? They like, we can't. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. But look, they understood that every time black children were denied equal protection, every time video footage of black people getting beat and rolled up in water holes by racist white mob, the communists would look at that and they said they just got more propaganda. This is the America. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is who you all say you should support over us. Now, let me tell you a little bit about, and here's another thing. Japan absolutely criticized American racism long before World War II. One of the major examples was during the Paris Peace Conference held in Paris, France in 1919. This was after World War I. Japan introduced what became known as the Racial Equality Proposal. During the negotiations for the League of Nations, Japan argued that all nations and races should be treated equally under the international law. And President Woodrow Wilson, you know, the same one that aired the movie Birth of a Nation, President Woodrow Wilson, and he said, Australia, they opposed the proposal because many of the white majority countries were heavily committed to segregation and anti-Asian immigration laws and white supremacist immigration policies at the time. Remember, they wouldn't even let Asians come over here. Okay, they wouldn't let. It was a restriction on who could get. It wasn't until the Hart-Celler Act of 1965 that they start letting white Asians, Africans, and such come over to the country. It was very small. It was just a black and white country. But nevertheless, Japan later used America's racial hypocrisy and segregation laws as propaganda to argue that these Western countries, you preach equality, but you practice racism, even against us. And so then during World War II, between 1942 and 1945, guess what happened to Japanese Americans? This became another international embarrassment. Another one, Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order and on February 19, 1942, he sent 120,000. Can you imagine rounding up 120,000 Americans? Japanese Americans, even if they were born here, okay, who lived on the West Coast, places like California, Oregon, Washington, D.C. They were forced, they were rounded up They were forced into internment camps. I just want you to picture this. You're a kid, your parents have been here for 100 years, but you're a Japanese American. Next thing you know, the federal authorities are rounding you up and putting you in a camp. They doing the same thing to people Japanese people in California, Oregon, and Washington that's going on in Yahtzee, Germany. You rounding people up. And so folk around the world pointed at that hypocrisy of America. You condemn the Yahtzees and their racism and their anti-Jewish propaganda, but you doing the same thing to your own citizens at home based on race and ancestry. Let me tell you how racist our country was, okay? Even the Nazis had to come over to the United States to study racism. They did it in the 1930s, and they developed what was called the Nuremberg laws. And historians have documented that the Nazi legal scholars examined Jim Crow laws in America, anti-miscegenation laws, banning interracial marriage, Native American segregation laws and policies, because if you looked at the Choctaw and the Cherokee, like I told y'all 2 or 3 months ago, you will see that written in their constitution is racial bias against black people. Okay, so stop letting the Native Americans off the hook. But bottom line is, the Yahtzees came over here. One of their German legal scholars, the man was named as Heinrich Kreger. This man actually studied race law at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville during the 1930s, because the Nazi officials wanted to understand how America legally managed racial segregation inside a supposed democratic society. How do you do that? How do you deprive people of their rights inside a democratic society where everybody's supposed to be equal? That is a hell of a math question to be answered. So let's go over here and see what the Americans have done. But see, here's the deeper point. Overt racism creates strategic problems for powerful nations. When racism becomes too damn obvious, it damages international credibility. America's enemies understood that. They weaponized America's racial hypocrisy against it constantly. They argued that capitalism and democracy and freedom were a scam designed to preserve white power while exploiting people of color, black people, and poor people. And that's also one of the reasons that the United States government spends so much time promoting black artists and musicians and athletes and diplomats overseas during the Cold War. Starting in the 19th, did y'all know that? Starting in the 1950s, the U.S. State Department sponsored black jazz musicians like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie to travel overseas internationally as jazz ambassadors. See, we treat our Negroes well. Look at him play this little flute. This little show. Look at him. See, we treat him well. Look at our special needs. That's what they do. You see? And the government hoped that these tours would counter this Soviet propaganda by showing the world successful black Americans, okay, representing the United States abroad. Because see, at the end of the day, overt racism isn't just morally ugly, it's politically dangerous and it's economically harmful, okay? And diplomatically, it's embarrassing and it's strategically weak. Once racism becomes too visible, it stops being deniable. And once the world can clearly see, America's enemies use it as evidence that the country's own ideals are fraudulent. Keep in mind, family, the vast majority of the world are people of some degree of color. What we call white people, which is actually a new invention, are a tiny percentage on the planet, less than 7%. They are literally a tiny percentage on the planet. Okay. And here's the thing: when you start opening, and so the rest of the world sees how poor you treat these black and brown people over here. They're like, hold on a minute, we ain't fooling with y'all like that. Okay. Now, again, my general concept and discussion today is that I'm trying to explain why Chud the Builder is bad for business. Okay, because open racism is bad for business. So when you start looking at racial violence in American history, and I kind of alluded to this before, Red Summer, Tulsa, massacre, destruction of Black Wall Street, a lot of these are attacks on prosperous black communities, okay? All right, whether we're talking about the South, the Midwest, whatever. See, white supremacy racism it's not about the system of racism. It's not about personal hatred, okay? I want you to understand that it's not about personal, it's about a system denying certain people, a certain class of people based on their ethnicity and race. It was also about protecting economic dominance and suppressing competing economic power. Now, okay, are y'all learning something? I know I'm going fast, but it's a lot of material. I want y'all to get this, and I want you to get it quick. Okay, all right. But the main thing is that is an economic element. That economic element still matters today. Open racism is not just morally ugly, it's bad business. Somebody type bad business. It's financially reckless. It scares the money away. It scares investment and talent and tourism and trade away. Do you know that we are down on tourism? You know why Vegas is dying? Japanese, they're not coming over here. Okay? Too many ICE walking around. All right? They're bypassing the United States. You got a lot of Canadians. They don't want to come down here either. Okay, they're going to the Bahamas and Mexico. You're messing up your international partnerships. If you're a wealthy Japanese investor and you believe Asian people are openly discriminated against in America, why would you invest billions of dollars here? If you're an African oil executive or a Nigerian businessman or a Saudi investor or a wealthy Arab entrepreneur, why would you bring your money into a society where minorities are being openly harassed and profiled and attacked? And the same goes for Hispanic businessmen and international corporations and African governments and foreign investors all over the world. Money likes stability. Money likes predictability. Money likes safety. That's why you don't invest in your play cousins, your third cousin's car wash scam idea. You like, nah, I'm gonna go ahead and go and look at one of these Fortune 500 companies and invest in the stock market. That's what you did, right? Okay, because you like stability. You want to be able to get your money back with a return. Open racism creates instability and social tension and lawsuits and protests and violence and bad international publicity and political division. You think people overseas aren't looking at what Chud the Builder was doing and nobody did anything about it till this man shot somebody? What do you think the Chinese are saying? We look like idiots to the Chinese. You can talk about, oh, China's oppression, but you got this man who's been walking around aggravating people with a gun and pop somebody, and y'all wait till he shot somebody before you arrested him. That's bad business. Chud the Builder and open racism are bad for tourism. They're bad for international trade. And that's why overt racism eventually becomes a problem, even for people who privately benefit from the racial hierarchy. Once racism becomes too visible, it begins interfering with the flow of the money and the economic growth. And that's one reason America has repeatedly tried to soften or rebrand its racial image throughout history. The country understands it can't dominate the global economy and at the same time look like a racially hostile society on the world stage. America wants foreign investment. America wants international trade. America wants the brightest minds and the wealthiest investors and the strongest businesses, relationships from around the world. That's what you want. Well, when you got clowns like Chud the Builder walking around calling folk chimps and stuff like that, that interferes with all that. And see, at the center of white supremacy, racism has always been an economic incentive. It's economics, it's the money. The goal is to suppress the economic growth of some groups while protecting the uplifting the economic positions of others. That's why racism historically intensifies whenever people believe wealth and land, jobs and contracts and political influence and economic power are shifting away. And that's also why open racism eventually creates backlash. Once racism becomes too obvious and too embarrassing and too costly and financially and powerful institutions begin to step in because the damage to the business and the national stability become too expensive to ignore. Now, are y'all still with me? Are you learning something? Are you learning something? Let me know that you're learning something. Are you learning something? Let me know. All right, now let's get back to it. Now, American overt racism on the 20th. I want to something I've been building off earlier. Okay, one of the strongest recruiting tools that America's enemies used was the overt racism of the 20th century. And I've hinted on this before, and I'm going to talk to you guys about this again. We're going to drive this point home. Many of our so-called Black intellectuals and activists became interested in socialism and communism because they saw capitalism in America operating along segregation and lynching and exploitation and racial inequality. You have people like Paul Robeson, Angela Davis, the Black Panther Party, W.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr. They explore these socialist ideas because they believe America had failed to fairly distribute economic opportunity to Black citizens. Listen to what I'm saying, okay? Just listen. The argument from the socialists is real easy to understand. If the capitalist system allowed rich white elites to maintain power while poor Black Americans remain oppressed, then perhaps wealth and power needed to be redistributed through the government intervention, okay? In other words, we're gonna let the government come in and take the money from the rich white folk. They don't want us to have it anyway. They burnt up all our stuff. Okay, we talk about between 1920 and 1970 when you had the rise of these Black folk intellectuals, you know, Black Renaissance, et cetera, et cetera. But see, here's the problem. Many Black communities that once focused, when that began to set in, when that mindset, we're gonna let the government get it for us and give it to us, you know, we stopped focusing on building like we had been doing and ownership and institution building and land acquisition and banking economic independence. We gradually became dependent on the government systems and political promises instead of continuing the strong tradition of independent Black institution building that existed after slavery. You see, we got a Black man right now. He's been trying to build a school for like 15 years. But the Black folk that came up out of slavery, they built like 150 schools in 15 years. You understand what I'm saying? You see? But they got together. They were builders. Somebody typed builders to beggars. Somebody typed builders to beggars. We sat around and waited for the government to give it to us. And then in walks the Democrats, say, hey, y'all want some welfare? It's kind of the same thing. We'll give you some money. It's kind of the same thing, right? So those leaders of ours, so disgruntled and angry with capitalism in America in general, they said, well, hell, the government needs to do this job because, you know, every time we get it on our own, they just burn our stuff down. And then the Democrats came in right after that and say, hey, well, you know what? If you vote for us, we'll give you some free stuff. Same thing. You see? But see, here's the larger point. And it remains the same. Once racism, open racism is bad for business, bad for national unity, and bad for America's global image. And when racism becomes too visible, it scares investment away, right? Because it creates damage to your international relationships, it fuels political instability, and it weakens America's moral authority on the world stage. Somebody type moral authority. How can you tell us what to do and what you think we should be doing, and you over here doing all these horrible things to your so-called citizens? Why would immigrants and investors and business and tourists or foreign governments fully trust a society where people openly fear that they're going to be treated bad because of the color of their skin, when the vast majority of the people that you want the money from are the color of the people, or somewhat the color of the people who you say you don't like, who you feel are inferior? You see what I mean? They don't want to come over here and get harassed and profiled and attacked because of the race or ethnicity. And that economic element, it matters today. Open racism is not just morally ugly, it is bad for business. It scares the money away. All right? Just think about that. Okay? Now, so when you see somebody like Chud the Builder openly provoking Black people in public, you need to understand that the problem isn't just one racist live streamer. He's a financial liability. And the deeper issue is that we're living through another historical moment where racism has become more visible, more aggressive, and less ashamed of itself. But history also shows that once racism becomes too open and too undeniable, eventually it creates a backlash, because people can finally point directly at it and say, see, there it is. Somebody say, whoop, there it is. I want everybody in the chat room to say, whoop, there it is. Everybody who gave a cash app, all my cash app people say, whoop, there it is. Okay, whoop, there it is. And once racism loses its ability to hide behind plausibility and deniability, the entire society is forced to confront what it really looks like because it affects the economy. It messes up the money. So again, okay, the truth is racism, specifically white supremacy racism, is really a trick. Somebody type trick in the chat room. Let's talk about it. Let's learn something. All my white supremacists, all my trashy problem people, the trash problem of open air racists bring to America. This is for you. I want you to hear something. I want y'all to come in tight. All my little white supremacist racists, come on in here. I got something. I want you to learn something. You know Uncle D wants you to learn. I want to burn your little ears. I want your little ears to be hot and burning when we finish today. Come on in. Come in close. Oh, it's white night. Somebody type white night in the chat room. It's white night. Okay? It's white night tonight. It's y'all night tonight. I want you to come in. Not to the white ally. Not you all. You all probably know this already. Y'all have your own issues. But I want to talk to you about something, some historical events, so we can kind of put this thing into frame and context. Many years ago, many moons ago, this system, well, let me say it like this. The system is designed to divide the masses while a small group at the top controls the money and the land and the labor and the political power. And understand that you have to be all the way, you got to go all the way back to the 1600s, something called Bacon's Rebellion. Now, this is not, when I say Bacon's Rebellion, I'm not talking about, when your girlfriend put that turkey bacon on the plate and you wanted that pork slab. That's not this is not the Bacon's Rebellion I'm talking about. Somebody type Bacon's Rebellion. That's not what I'm talking about. Bacon's Rebellion, okay? She messed around and put that cardboard-like turkey bacon on your plate, and she know damn well that you like that good pork slab. That's what you like. But that's not what we talk about, okay? When I say Bacon's Rebellion, I'm talking about something else. Okay, we talking about the 1600s. Okay, back then, what we now call the United States was not the United States at all in the 1600s. We were a British colony. Okay, we were under direct control of the king or the British crown, as they say. And Virginia, especially around Jamestown in 1670, was basically an overseas business operation owned and controlled by England. Okay, we were England's bitch. That's what we were. Okay, we were here we was on the track. Okay, that's what we were. We was out here tricking. Talking about, yeah, what you need? Yeah, daddy, I got. That's what we were doing. We was out here tricking for England. Okay, that's what colony means. Okay, tricking. Somebody type few Quan. We was England's little side bitch over here in the New World, out here tricking and sending sugar back so England could line them pocket. England was our pimp. Okay. All right, I'll think about it like that. So, or for you all who don't like that terminology, I apologize. Sorry, kids. Imagine if America established a colony on Mars, and the colony would still be under American authority. Right? That's what Virginia was to England. The king appointed a governor to run the colony and protect the England's financial interests. Get on out there and make sure they working on the strip. That's basically what they said. At the time, the colony was full of poor people, poor labor. Who you think is going to come over here? Rich? Hell no. You don't send no rich people over here. Poor people, send the poor. Want to go to jail? Go to jail. If not, we'll send you to the New World. So you had poor white indentured servants. They came from England and Ireland and other parts of Europe. Irish were dirt poor. England, they had poverty everywhere. These white, I don't know why black people think all white people were rich. They were not. I mean, America has had to give them all sorts of handouts just to get them up to a certain point. White people are not rich. Okay? The vast majority of white people are just dirt poor as the rest of y'all. Okay? Bottom line is, they were poor and they agreed to work for years in exchange for passage to what was called a New World. It wasn't nothing for them over there. Wasn't nothing for them in England but a jail cell. Let's go to the New World. And then you had enslaved Africans. Black people been kidnapped from Africa, brought through the Caribbean off the time and as slaves into the colonies. Both of these people were out here in these brutal, hot-ass Virginia fields under terrible conditions. I'm talking mosquitoes the size of baby shoes, okay? And the wealthy plantation owners, these were the colonial elite. This was the rich. These were the billionaires of the time and the millionaires. And people need to understand what early America actually looked like. There were no highways. There was no I-95 and the I-10. This wasn't the suburbs. There were no modern cities. Colonial Virginia was swamp. It was swamp. It was forest. It was wilderness. It was frontier territory. Guess who else was out there? The Native Americans. And they was scalping. They was doing that work. They controlled large portions of land, and it was a lot of fighting going, a lot of conflict between the quote unquote settlers and these tribes, and it was very violent. Okay, there was no emergency room treatment, no stitches. You was gonna die. Okay, these were not peaceful Thanksgiving images people grow up seeing in elementary school or the textbooks. Okay, these Native men, they had everything they need. They had bows, arrows, hatchets, knives, rocks. And some of them had got firearms through trade and warfare with the European. Kill him, take his gun. Musket. Somebody type musket in the chat room. Frontier life was dangerous. It was brutal. It could happen to you. It could pop off at any time. Okay, so here's what happened. The wealthy white folks said, look, send all the poor whites. Y'all going out there on the, they basically the wealthy colonial elites and the plantation owners, they pushed all the poor white people with the indentured servants and the enslaved blacks out there toward the dangerous part. Okay, y'all go stand out there, and that's where you do your work. So they basically acted as a buffer between the wealthy white landowners and the Native American attacks. And so basically it was a human wall. Y'all want to kill somebody, go ahead and kill them. The same thing we did with the Iraq war. And most of you all don't realize this, but the reason we picked Iraq, and this is me saying this, so, whatever, but if you just analyze it, they wanted these folk in 9/11 wanted to unalive Americans. So, hey, let's pick a spot and that's target rich, and let's go to Iraq. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our best and brightest, our soldiers and our Marines, and we'll invade that. And if they want to come fight Americans, they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do a 9/11 to us anymore. They're gonna have to fight us on their territory. And so that's what it did. And it drained a lot of those resources over there. So basically, our soldiers in that long, protracted war acted as a buffer zone between America's enemies and the United States homeland. And anybody who understands war strategy can figure that out. We don't want to fight anybody. We don't want them coming over here. If they want to unalive Americans, let them fight our military guys and women over there. So it's a very unfortunate war, but that was the strategy, and that was designed to drain the resources. And we didn't like Iraq anyway, okay? But it was more than just oil. It was an attempt to drain the resources. It was tough choices that the President Bush had to make. But when you really look at what was going on, it makes sense. But anyway, so back to this. So the colonials, they threw all these poor white folk, and then y'all going out there, and and that was a problem. You got us out here in the wilderness, in the swamp, and you know what's happening out here. You know, if you know what's going on. We are acting that we're out here trying to work, making you all rich, and we're tired of it. And one of the key figures was a gentleman named Nathaniel Bacon. Okay, he had his own money. He wasn't poor. All right, he was angry with his cousin, who was the Virginia governor named William Berkeley. Okay, so Bacon and Berkeley were cousins, both of them rich white men. All right, but Bacon got the short end of the stick. They put his ass out there on the front line with them poor white people and those poor Indians, and they knew that the government wasn't protecting them from the attack and the conflict. They didn't put the arm. Bacon said, look, in 1676, Bacon led an armed rebellion. It was poor white people who were indentured servants, and they even had some black folk, okay, some slave labor. And they united against the colonial elite, other rich white folk, and his cousin. They were angry, number one, at the economic inequality, and the political favoritism and the lack of protection and the elite control over the land and the resource. So we over here dying to make y'all rich. We not, we over here dying to make you all rich, and you got us fighting these Indians. And so it got so intense. These fools burned down Jamestown. Imagine somebody burning down New York. Imagine they came and burned down New York. God damn. You understand what I'm saying? That's how intense it got. Jamestown was the capital of Virginia. Burned it to the ground in September 1676. And for a moment, the rich white folk was like, oh, the ruling class, they like, oh, we're going to lose control of these colonies. We out here by ourselves. And that's when the colonial elites came up with this letter. They learned a lesson. And this lesson would shape American history for centuries. Poor whites and poor blacks together was extremely dangerous to the ruling class. Somebody type poor people. Come on now, let's get it together. Poor whites and poor blacks. If those groups united economically and politically, they could threaten the elite wealth and power. So after Bacon's rebellion was crushed, the colonial leaders, they slowly began creating what would become the American racial caste system. Beginning in the late 1600s and the early 1700s, these rich white colonial lawmakers in Virginia and other colonies, they start passing laws that gave poor white people little small privileges, little legal advantages over black people. Even if those whites were still dirt goddamn poor, right? You got white indentured servants. They got a few little voting rights. Now you still out here chopping sugar cane. You still out here getting sick. You still out here getting stung by mosquitoes. Okay, you still out here dying of malaria. Okay, but you got the right to vote for the person that we want you to vote for, either one. Okay, they got a little land ownership, little not much, a little tiny bit. They got lighter punishments under the law. Isn't that something? Right? Little bit. Okay? So they had a little social superiority to the blacks. And that gave poor white people the image of authority, the illusion of status, somebody type illusion of status, and the feeling that they were part of the ruling class simply because they were white. Meanwhile, everybody still was out there in the fields getting shot at by Indians, okay? But it got them content. It made the wealthy landowners richer and more secure. And so these colonial laws increasingly they prohibited poor white people and black people from even coming together. Y'all can't go to the same church. You can't marry each other. You can't live together freely. We're gonna keep it separate in that way. That's gonna help cut down on this collective resistance that damn near burnt down the damn Jamestown, right? And the entire point was division. The elites understood that if poor white folk identified more with wealthy white plantation owners than they did other poor black people who was in the same situation they're in, then the ruling class would be able to maintain control without constantly fearing another rebellion like Bacon's rebellion. Okay? And that's how the trick was born. The wealthy elite basically told poor white people, you may be poor, but you're still white. So at least you're better than those blacks. And they handed them what we call a psychological butter biscuit. Somebody type butter biscuit in the chat room. They handed you didn't know white people had butter biscuits? They gave them a butter biscuit. In order to keep the butter melting on those biscuits, they had to invent an entire mountain of pseudoscience and fake history and distorted religion and outright nonsense to convince poor whites that they were somehow naturally superior to black people. Somebody type IQ test. That's a butter biscuit. Okay? Somebody type butter biscuit. I want you to think about how insane it really is for a second. Think about this. You're talking about poor white folk who are out here barefoot in the mud, living in shacks, dying from disease, women dying at childbirth, barely eating, working themselves half to death, right alongside enslaved Africans and other poor free black people. So in order to convince them that they were somehow better, these elites literally start just making up stuff. They created fake sciences like phrenology. You know, that was during the 1800s, and it polarized people like Franz Joseph Gall in the late 1700s, John Spurling, 1800. They claimed that the shape of a person's head determined their intelligence. God damn. I know plenty of peanut head people that are real smart, but they had these folk believing that the shape of your head determined whether you were smart or not. The morality and criminality, okay, were determined by the shape of your head, okay? Somebody type butter biscuit. These are white supremacy butter biscuits. You know what I'm saying? I bet they are dry as hell, but they're butter biscuits nonetheless, okay? They came up with the craniometry, where scientists literally measured somebody's skull to rank racial hierarchy. And one of the most famous figures was a dude named Samuel George Morton, a Philadelphia physician in 1830, 1840. He collected hundreds of human skulls and claimed Caucasians had larger brains and therefore greater intelligence. Butter biscuit. Butter biscuit. His work became influential among the defenders of slavery. Well, you know, they have small heads. What about the ones that you have sex with and have children with? What about that? Those kids, butter biscuits. They had to keep making up stuff, okay? And it didn't stop. Then you get the scientific racism and the eugenics in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. You have people like Francis Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin, who coined the term eugenics in 1883, and he argued society should encourage the reproduction of supposedly superior races and discourage the reproduction of supposedly inferior ones. And American eugenists later used this idea to justify forced sterilization and immigration and restrictions and anti-miscegenation laws and segregation policies. Okay? So again, you also had people like Joseph Knott and George Glidden. They published a book like it's Types of Mankind in 1854. These are their butter biscuits, arguing that different races were actually separate species created at a different time. They had no DNA, nothing, they were just making it up. They used distorted interpretations of religion, anthropology, biology, just to claim black people were naturally inferior. And these ideas became extremely popular. Butter biscuits. These butter biscuits were consumed white people. Delicious. They needed that. Okay? They needed to feel better. Okay? And they became extremely popular in the American South in the Civil War because they gave slave owners and wealthy elites the scientific excuse to keep doing these horrible things. Remember, these people had to justify because of their religion. Their Judeo-Christian religion says all men are created equal. Well, if we just say they're not men, then they don't have to be equal. Butter biscuit. Butter biscuit. I mean, they measuring heads, noses, jaws, foreheads, lips, teeth, pelvises, bone structures. You know what they didn't measure? They even tried to pathologize the length of black men's, tallywhackers to say, oh, that just means low IQ. I bet the white woman didn't think that. She didn't think that. There's a lot of young white girls that got sent down south to have a baby. But either way, the bottom line is they felt like this all proved white superiority, and they talked about all these different, it's just foolishness, okay? Scientists, politicians, preachers, scholars, they twisted biology and religion into propaganda and tools designed, okay, just to justify this racial hierarchy. These are all the butter biscuits they consume. And understand something, they had to go that hard because that lie itself was very difficult to maintain. Think about that. When you're standing next to another human being who's stronger than you, faster than you, smarter than you, more disciplined than you, more talented than you, and oftentimes wealthier than you, it takes an enormous psychological operation to keep convincing yourself you're still someone superior simply because of the color of your skin. And so they had to deal with that after black people came out of slavery, and they had all these towns around the country. So what did they do? They weaponized religion. Hell, even during slavery in the 1700s and the 1800s, many of these white theologians promoted this so-called curse of Ham theory, which falsely claimed black people were divinely cursed through the Bible and therefore naturally destined for servitude. White people hadn't even been invented when the Bible stories were originally written. You know that? Have y'all figured? The whole Bible is about black and brown people in North Africa, or what we call the Middle East. You understand? The whole thing, right? That wasn't even real theology. That was propaganda designed to morally justify slavery and racial hierarchy to poor white people in religious communities. I want you to think about that. I want y'all to think about this. Let's move forward to 2026. Somebody type 2026 in the chat. Imagine trying to convince some poor white boy sitting in a trailer park with no air conditioning. Boy can barely bench 80 pounds, struggling to pay his bills, that he is somehow better and inherently superior to one of these 6'8" black multimillionaire NBA players who's world famous, respected globally, and physically dominant, financially successful, and culturally influential. That is not a small lie. That is a massive psychological trick. Shout out to Fitzgerald. To make that trick work, you have to bring out the big guns. You got to need fake science. You need distorted religion. You need propaganda. You need social conditioning. You need institutions reinforcing the message constantly over and over again. And honestly, a lot of these ideas still exist today. They are still passing out butter biscuits to white people. They just dress it up in more sophisticated language. Instead of openly talking about skull measurements and racial purity, people hide behind IQ. Somebody type IQ, crime stats, right? Oh, well, no. If you do the math and you see, yeah, I know, but no, it's more black people are arrested. Well, hold on, no, it clearly says more white people. No. It's right there. That's what the FBI, no. Well, if you just separate this out from that, per capita, somebody type per capita, butter biscuit. You understand? That's what that is. All these genetic theories, butter biscuits. All these cultural arguments, more butter biscuits. All this coded political language trying to suggest that one group is naturally superior to the other, butter biscuits. The packaging changes, but the underlying insecurity often is just the same. It's just another butter biscuit. Okay? Again, if we even want to look into this so-called intelligence testing itself, it has a very complicated, distorted history. In the early 1900s, these IQ testing, it became tied to racial immigration policies. So the story is during World War I, they had Army Alpha and Beta tests, and they were administered to these huge numbers of recruits. Shout out to my man Red Sigma. Some of the researchers literally, they falsely interpreted the results to argue that Southern Europeans and Eastern Europeans and blacks and immigrants were intellectually inferior. They falsified it, okay? And those flawed conclusions helped influence immigration restrictions like the Immigration Act of 1924, which basically said we want Northern Europeans and we don't want the rest. And so then in 1994, you had the book called The Bell Curve, and that reignited the national debate about arguing about intelligence and the difference between groups heavily influenced by genetics. And critics attacked the book by, for relying on questionable assumptions and ignoring environmental factors and reviving all these old scientific racist arguments in modern language. But they needed more up-to-date butter biscuits. Again, the packaging changes, but the underlying racial hierarchy argument, it remained familiar because deep down, the average human ego wants to feel important. It wants to feel chosen. It wants to feel elevated above everybody else. And white supremacy racism gave poor white people the shortcut to that status. Here's your butter biscuit. You're better than the blacks. Even if they had no money, no land, no education, no power, they could still cling to that idea that at least we're white. And that's the emotional payoff of the system. And that's also where a lot of frustration comes from today. That's why they mad. Somebody type mad. You think Judd, if Judd was a multimillionaire, you think he'd be running around calling people, telling people they chip out? No, he wouldn't. You just be honest. But see, the more society becomes integrated and globalized and competitive, the harder it becomes to maintain these old racial myths. Okay, it's only so many butter biscuits you can give out. When you got black people become successful, wealthy, educated, and influential, and globally respected, right? It enforces people to confront the uncomfortable contradictions between the racist stories they were taught and the reality sitting right in front of them. So the system constantly has to reinvent new ways to protect that illusion. And that's why white supremacy racism is always dependent so heavily on propaganda and pseudoscience and fear and mythology and institutional reinforcement. Because once people start honestly comparing human beings as individuals, the entire racial hierarchy starts becoming harder and harder to justify intellectually. They got to get all these immigrants out of here. These immigrants are showing us up. We want this to be an all-white country, so we don't have anybody to compare ourselves to other white people. You see? You understand what I'm saying? And the crazy part is a lot of poor white folk, white Americans, still politically align themselves with the wealthy elite, the billionaires and the corporations. Even when those same elites are polluting their rivers and outsourcing jobs and avoiding taxes and underfunding schools and exploiting working people economically of all races, they hold on to the hope that one day I might be able to leave this trailer park and become rich and powerful and financially successful, even though they work hard and save their money. That's all they got to do. But instead of identifying with other struggling working class black people, they choose to identify with the wealthy white upper class that they aspire to join. Meanwhile, many people they support send their own children to these elite private schools costing $50,000 to $75,000 a year, while these white folks send their kids to public school with the poor black people. Okay, in these white communities, they're underfunded, they're riddled with drug addicts and alcoholics. Look at these white people dealing with a lot. You know, and poor white people are trained to complain about affirmative action all the time. But one of the biggest forms of affirmative action in America has always been legacy admissions in these elite universities like Harvard and Yale and whatnot. If your father or your grandfather donated millions of dollars and has his name on a building, your chances of admission rise dramatically, okay? And that's why when you got poor white boys like Chud the Builder from backwoods-ass Tennessee, that's why he matters symbolically. You understand? See, overt racism becomes emotional weapon for low class, low status white boys trying to cling, and white women trying to cling to some form of social power in a world where they're being swarmed, okay, and outdone, and it's openly apparent. So when you're dealing with somebody like Chud, I may not be rich, but I'm better than you. You're a chimp. I can make you chimp out. I can call you an N-word and control you because you're emotional and all these things they say, all these butter biscuits, and I'm gonna carry a gun. And the system won't punish me because I'm white. That's my privilege. And that's the psychology behind a lot of that behavior. Shout out to Bovine Trades. Are y'all learning something? Is this too long? I might be talking too long. I'll try to wrap it up. But are y'all understanding? Is this making sense? Okay. But see, again, that's the psychology behind the behavior. But see, at the very top of the pyramid, the real elites, they don't care. Look, they usually care about money and not the exclusivity of race. Finance is the priority. Profit is the ultimate priority. If exploiting immigrant labor makes corporations money, they're going to do it. That's why companies lobby for cheap labor and temporary visa programs, outsource labor markets, and immigration systems that reduce labor costs. Corporations aren't thinking emotionally about race. They're thinking about profit margins, and they're investors and lining their own pockets. They just got these poor white boys on the front line. fighting the Indians with the darks, with the y'all get on out there. You got it. Here you go. We care about you. You're like us. Here, think about this, family. If white supremacy racism were truly the number one priority of wealthy elite, they would spend unlimited money making sure every position stayed in white hands no matter the cost, wouldn't they? But they don't, do they? Shout out to Yaya. They don't. They will hire an Indian tech worker on an outsourced manufacturing to Mexico and China and import labor and automate the jobs and restructure industries if it increases the profit. And that is the tragedy. And honestly, that is the stupidity of a lot of these poor white people that still haven't figured it out. Bacon Rebellion's con. That's what they did. This is Bacon's rebellion, the Bacon Rebellion con. They got these poor white people on the front line. They're the frontline foot soldiers of a racial system that economically exploits them they're the cops espousing these racial ideas while policing poor black communities. They're the military servicemen sent off to fight wars for the elite interests in these other countries, typically against brown people. They're the school teachers getting paid a few pennies. There's the prison guards. They basically in prison all day, throwing their life away. Bureaucrats, factory workers, governmental clerks, operating the machinery of the system that ultimately sees them as expendable too. They're the hands pulling the levers, turning the gears, replacing the cogs. But truthfully, to the wealthy elite, they ain't nobody special. They're disposable. You spend your whole life maintaining the system. They give you a funky little Medicaid and a retirement, and you're out. And yet, this same group of people, these same group of poor whites, and there's some blacks and some Latinos involved in it, they are the ones who are, but especially these poor whites, they remain the most emotionally invested in defending the racial hierarchy, even when the people at the top are primarily motivated by money, profit, and power, not some deep sense of white unity. And honestly, you think by now, these poor white people would have figured the game out, especially considering how the wealthy elite talk about them behind closed doors. They don't see them as equals. They don't invite them to the country clubs or corporate boardrooms or private islands or elite social circles. In many cases, they just refer to them as poor whites. The hell, they call them white trash or trailer trash, rednecks, hillbillies. And that's the irony of the entire system. The same poor whites who passionately defend the racial hierarchy are the trash to the very elites they think they're aligned with. Tell me I'm lying. Chud, that man is going to spend the rest of his life in jail, okay, if he's lucky. Shout out to Red Conversation. You understand what I'm saying? His natural life, because you never look, you know how many people in there that don't like him? But people like that still cling to the illusion that whiteness itself places them closer to the elite and puts them on a higher status than black people, Hispanic or immigrant families that's right beside them struggling. And that's the real psychological power of the Bacon Rebellion con. And the system convinced the generation of poor white boys and white girls to emotionally identify upward with white elites instead of sideways with other working class people. And as long as they stay emotionally invested in protecting the hierarchy, then they're gonna fail to recognize that they're being economically manipulated. And that's why racism survives best when it convinces poor white people to fight each other or fight other marginalized people instead of examining who actually controls the wealth, the institutions and the systems themselves. You see? Okay, that makes sense. Did y'all follow that? Well, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank everybody who contributed to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I do have some more things to say. I hope you all have learned something here. I hope that you all have picked up some information. Okay, I hope that you hope that y'all have learned something. I hope that you have. I want to make sure that you all learned something today. And so what I'm going to need you all to do, if you did learn something, I should earn something, then you don't owe me anything. We don't do that here. Okay. Shout out to Eileen Corliss. Thank you so much. And my man Obadiah, appreciate you, fam. Thank you for the cash apps. Now we have approximately 15 super chats. Okay. And actually, we don't have 15 super chats. We actually have some new members. Shout out to David Boyd. 7043 became a YouTube member. Good looking out. That's my 200. CJ Marsh, thank you so much. Justin Case, thank you for the super sticker. Canary Valence, thank you for the collection. Blazing Trigon, thank you so much. Did y'all learn a lot? Did you learn about the Second Amendment, First Amendment? Also, big shout out to CJ Marsh again. Fitzgerald, waited for this. Thank you. Hope you guys appreciate it. Also, that be me 8087. Thank you for the super sticker. Few Kwan, my man. Thank you for the $10. Also, Few came back. Fitzgerald, thank you so much. Taking notes. Red Sigma, good looking out. To lies to justify medical apartheid BLK bodies. Bovine trades, we're learning more about these butter biscuits for real. And Yaya's kids, good looking out. So, and also a real conversation, giving people real history lessons. Yeah, I try to do that. I try to anchor these conversations in history. You know, yeah, I do appreciate you guys and the time you spent with me. And I want you to learn something. I don't want to just be another person on the internet talking crazy, because you could talk about current issues all you want, but folk, you need to anchor it so people can truly understand. Okay. So, you know, I appreciate you guys. We're going to go ahead and, you know, I got a couple of more things to say. And here's why we're here today. Why are we here today? For you all who don't know why we're here, this is why we're here. Okay? This is why we're here. We're here because of this guy. Okay?
Influencer known as Chud the Builder is now facing an attempted murder charge after a shooting today outside the Montgomery County courthouse. Deputies say Dalton Etherly, better known on social media as Chud the Builder, was involved in a fight leading to gunfire. Both men were hospitalized. Deputies just arrested Etherly, charging him with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon. Tonight, he's being held in the Montgomery County jail.
By type, he looking at 91 years. 91. This is why we're here. We're here because this man named Dalton Etherly, and this is him actually speaking.
These people took all my phones. That is evidence of the crime of me streaming, me walking out, disorderly conduct. I don't believe that for a second.
This is after his arrest for the running out on the tab, allegedly.
Believe that for a second. So, anyway, so I'm talking to the fucking Fed.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically got to the point where they were like conceding in a way, like, listen, like basically saying like, we got nothing on you. And
they got you now, bro. They got you now. They got your ass now. Matter of fact, they got you by the short ones. Okay, I'm just saying, they got you.
Corey DeLeon in Greensboro, North Carolina.
He should have quit while he was ahead. You see, you know, he was able to get away with some of those antics. He should have got up out the game, man. But I'm not gonna put this up, but this is from a movie. This is what his first day is gonna be like in prison. All right, I probably should let it.
Must be that white cop, huh? Get up the.
Yeah, this is from a movie way back. They just got him getting beat up. The brothers see him. Look at that. Boom, boom. He getting rolled up. stomped out. They say this is gonna be his first day in prison. You see, they got him in single solitary confinement. He see the brothers out there waiting for him. Watch what he does. Okay, he hits the cop and locks himself back up. So this is that's a movie. I don't want to play it because I don't want to get a copyright issue. But the bottom line is this, fam. You know, so now that Chud the Builder, author Dalton Etherly, he sits in a Tennessee jail with a $1.25 million bond, facing charges that include attempted murder, schmurder, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon, and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. It's a lot. And after the shooting outside the Montgomery County Courthouse in Clarksville, Tennessee, now he's presumed innocent, but based on what the public reported, the surveillance footage and witness statements, even his own live stream comments, the fact that another man was airlifted from an emergency surgery, and the fact that Etherly allegedly shot himself in the arm during the same confrontation, this is not some little misdemeanor live stream stunt anymore. There's some real criminal exposure and in a real court with real prison time on the table, 91 years. And remember, this didn't happen in a vacuum just because just days before the courthouse shooting on May 9th, I mean, Etherly was arrested at the steakhouse called Bob's Steak and Chop House in Nashville because he stopped streaming and he walked out without paying his bill. And so he was charged with theft, okay? And then on May 31st, he ends up in the courthouse with another confrontation, and then you got shots fired. Now, again, you know, I've seen the reports, online chatter, and his fans are trying to raise money for him, and I verified that his goal was $100,000 on his GoFundMe, and he's went far past that. Somebody type GoFundMe in the chat room. Let's talk about this GoFundMe, okay? And the question should be not how much money he raised on the GoFundMe. Will it actually be collected? And there's a reason to be skeptical. GoFundMe's own terms prohibit fundraisers for legal defense of financial or violent crimes. That includes murder, robbery, assault, and battery. This is GoFundMe's own stuff. All right. GoFundMe has also publicly said its policy prohibits raising money for the legal defense of an alleged violent crime. So if anybody thinks they're just going to run over to GoFundMe and bankroll Chud the Builder's defense after an attempted murder charge, that may not work the way they think it works. And if he is convicted and sent to prison, that's where this whole racist performance stops being a live stream and becomes an everyday reality. Tennessee prison data shows a very deep racial disparity. Okay, they found that Black people made up 18% of Tennessee's state population, but 42% of the people in prison, because we know how we're targeted. Bottom line is, a lot of Black people in there with nothing to lose. Okay. Now, we do understand that Black people are incarcerated 3 to 4 times the rate of white people, and so if butt plug Chud, I should say that, if Chud the Builder thought it was cute to walk around in public provoking Black people for content, that Tennessee prison is not a comment section. It's not a live stream either. It's controlled, confined, and it's full of angry Black men with nothing to lose who are not going to find his routine entertaining. Don't they have an open floor plan in the state prison in Tennessee? Where my guys at who've been locked down? Don't they have an open floor plan? Ain't nothing in there but some steel benches and an open floor plan, unless you want to stay in your cell all day. That means, and you're gonna be in there with the inmates by yourself. The prison guards are not coming to save you. This man looking at 91 years. And see, this needs to be a lesson to all you wanna be open racists who think you thought Chud the Builder was cute. Eventually, you're going to run across the right one. Somebody type the right one. Eventually, you're going to run across the right one. You can carry a gun, you can yell slurs, you can call it free speech, but you can tell yourself everybody's scared of you. But a gun only works as intimidation against people who are thinking rationally, who are afraid, who are afraid to die, who believe they still have something to lose. It doesn't work the same way on somebody who's traumatized and desperate and unstable and enraged, or simply past the point of caring. And unfortunately, because of this racially charged climate that we live in, and black people, there's a lot of people out there like that. Okay? And that's why overt racism fails. It invites challenge. Conflict invites conflict. Provocation invites response. And see, history has some hard lessons that they don't teach y'all. And I'm talking to the white folk. I want you to hear me. Listen. During slavery, historians have identified 250 to 311 slave uprisings in the colonial and the United States history. And see, let me borrow, I want you to hear me real close. I want you to listen to me real close. Okay? This is for you. I want you to understand something. In that history, it's very rarely ever taught black people chimped out and hundreds of white people died in horrible, bloody deaths. It's unfortunate. Okay? That's 311. Slavery didn't even have, it was 256 years, right? And so we looking at 311 slave rebellion. What does that tell you? Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. That's what that tells you. You see? And so what we've learned is that oppression didn't create peace, it created resistance. In Haiti, the Haitian Revolution began in 1791, and they defeated what was the biggest army in the world. The toughest, the baddest. Shout out to Bovine Trades. And after independence was declared, 13 years later, the 13-year war between the date of January 1st, 1804 and February, or should I say April 1804, Jean-Jacques Dessalines ordered his men to do something that required them to chimp out. Somebody typed chimped out in the chat room. They chimped out. They marched from house to house and they unalived thousands of French colonialists who remained in Haiti, which included men, women, and children. And if you read the historical accounts, they did so in very horrific ways. Somebody typed chimped out in the chat room. You see? Haiti was overtly racist also. And I'm not celebrating violence I am definitely not celebrating violence. That's a warning from history. When people are brutalized and humiliated and pushed beyond endurance, the response can become extremely bloody and uncomfortable and tragic. And we've seen it happen here in America also. See, they don't tell you that this man of peace, Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was unalived on April 4th, 1968, this man of peace, somebody type man of peace. What they don't tell you is that Black America chimped out. They don't tell you that, do they? We were only 20 million deep. We didn't have a lot of education. We didn't have a lot of money. Okay? But DC, the capital, there was riots consistently continued from April 4th all the way to April 8th. We didn't send out any mass text message. It was just on cue. It left 13 people unalived, 1,000 people injured, and more than 61,000 people arrested. But here's the thing you need to understand. It wasn't just DC. There was violence in 100 cities in America. You understand that? 100 cities exploded. You understand? That's not a threat. That's history. And see, the thing is, when people believe peaceful appeal has failed, and when they believe the system has closed every door, chaos is going to follow. This is the problem with overt racism. This is why the smart white supremacists know when to shut the fuck up. Somebody type "shut the fuck up" in the chat room. And if for those of y'all who don't want to curse, just say STFU, shut up. So here's my message, and it's simple. I'm a patriot. I believe in this country. I am a foundational Black American with roots that go back centuries in this country. In my opinion, this experiment that we call the United States of America is still worth saving. Our country is big enough for every American. And the answer isn't to push other American citizens into their racial corners and dare them to come out swinging, because they will. They will fight back. We always have, which is the most American thing that you can do, is fight. The answer is to build more and create more and invent more and make more room for more abundance. America's done great things when we get that way. When all the people of America were allowed to contribute, when we put men on the moon, we helped defeat fascism in World War II. Black scientists, doctors, lawyers, preachers, inventors, soldiers, workers, builders, and thinkers have helped make this country what it is, along with people from every other ethnic group that has poured its talent into this nation. But we can't let troublemakers like Chud the Builder and the rest of these racial arsonists push us into destroying our country. We've already tried that once during the Civil War. It was not pretty. Brothers fighting brothers, friends fighting friends, poor men dying so rich men could preserve a dying racist institution built on owning other human beings. They died so the wealthy elites could protect their plantations and their forced labor and their sexual domination and their private kingdoms and their control over Black bodies. And it's time to wake up. Open racism is not a strength. It is an invitation. It is not courage. It is weakness dressed up as courage. It's insecurity. Live stream. And if Chud the Builder teaches us anything, it's that racism, it'll get you views, it'll get you followers, it'll get you donations for a little while. But eventually, it's going to get you arrested, it's going to get you indicted, it's going to get you isolated and staring at prison sentences while the same internet crowd that cheered you moves on to the next fool. This is Uncle D. I love you all. God bless you all. And as I always say at this time, I'm out.
In the Spurling podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe.